Good evening. I was having a little technical issue because the camera was still open from doing the little update on Jared Lysick earlier, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't cooperating. So, problem solved. And let me just double check on. Let's go back just a teeny bit. Okay, here we go.
Let's see. I was provided a few exhibits, 96 and 97, which are CDs, and 91, which is a thumb drive. I don't have anything to play a CD on, so I didn't listen to those or watch them. But 91, I did listen to.
I just gave the clerk the thumb drive those exhibits.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I now have the thumb drive, which has been marked as exhibit 98. I'll listen to that over the lunch hour unless you all need me to listen to it sooner.
No, it would be for Detective Summershoe.
Okay. Any issues that you all wanted to take up before we get started with the jury?
Nothing, well, I believe so, yes. Now, we just received a thumb drive where the state is intending to play a conversation between the next witness, Mr. Jonathan Lakeman, and Alissa, Turney. We haven't had a chance to review that one. I do vaguely remember the call. I don't remember when it was, but it's hearsay. It's her statements that they're trying to bring in to try to, for the truth of the matter, asserted that she would have asked him to go to California.
All right, and what is the state's response?
It goes to the nature of their relationship, Your Honor. She's talking about, they're talking about going to the prom. The prom was shortly before she went missing. So, again, you can hear them talking. You can hear them talking to each other. What they're saying, we're not introducing for the truth of the matter asserted, other than to show their state of mind, or her state of mind at the time, close in time to when she went missing.
This, if I may address that, prom was prior to her running away and prior to her cheating on him. The prom happened before she was on the couch with Mike Stanley. So this call is from farther back in time. It is hearsay. It's not in close proximity within days of her going missing, and it does not paint the complete picture.
And so, Mr. Imbordino, the conversation is discussing prom?
Yes.
Okay. And I assume that the witness will be asked questions about the nature of their relationship and things that they talked about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is the recording adding to the issue?
Well, I can't tell you anything in addition to what I've already said. I believe that it corroborates the nature of their relationship.
Okay.
I mean, he can talk about, I agree with you, he could talk about the conversation, but it just seems to me it's better to play it. So.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to, Mr. Jackson, I don't know that you formally said it, but you're asking to preclude that exhibit, which do we have it marked?
It has not been a mark. We were just in the process of listening to it.
Okay, so it would be marked as exhibit number 102. So the court will grant the state's motion to preclude at this moment.
Defense.
The defense motion to preclude at this moment. Mr. Imbordino, if you feel as though a door has been opened during cross and you believe it's now admissible, you can certainly ask to approach and we can revisit the issue. But until there is some challenge as to Mr. Lakeman's descriptions of the nature of the relationship and things that they talked about, the court finds that it's not admissible. Anything else we can talk about before we bring the jury in?
That's with a different witness. So.
Okay. Judge, defense might have some motions with the next witness, but we can address that at a later time.
Well, do we think that'll be this morning?
He'll get started this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have at least a few minutes now. Any reason why we can't talk about it now?
There is a letter. I'm trying to see if they, are you not in, I don't see that. Are you still intending to try to play that letter that you emailed us last night? The letter to.
Counsel, I don't think the court reporter can hear you.
Just asking him a question. Please, the chief.
No.
You're not playing that anymore?
The letter that I gave you is a letter that they wrote to him.
Yeah, but last night you texted or emailed and said you planned on doing that. Are you not? Okay. Then we don't have an issue with that. The only other issue is there is a conversation between Mike Sr. and Mike Jr. in regards to Mike and or John taking Alissa in, adopting her, or like giving up his custodial rights. We don't object to a lot of what's in there. I believe it is relevant, but there is mention of molest and there's things in there. And we don't have a redacted version of that. I don't know if they're planning on trying to get into all of it. We would object to any mention of the molest allegations and different stuff like that.
Okay.
It seems to me the solution to that would have been for them to tell me what they wanted to redact. But number two, I'm happy to redact anything that the court believes is necessary. So perhaps you could review this exhibit. And then
First, let's have defense review it and identify what they want to redact, and then you'll look at their requests. And if you disagree with them, then I'll step in. But it sounds as though you two are capable of resolving this on your own.
probably so. Yes.
All right, that would be my preference.
Well, Judge, we can review that over lunch then, and then address it. Maybe we can come back early and address it before then.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Thank you.
And I believe he'll be on long enough that won't be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. And is the next witness in the courtroom?
He's not in there yet, but he's outside.
You can bring him in if you'd like. And Angela, you can bring the jury in. Sir, if you want to just sort of wait, sir, if you want to just sort of wait where you are, as soon as we get the jury seated, we'll bring you forward. be seated. We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you back this morning. Thank you so much for making it back on time. The state may call its next witness.
Jonathan Lockman, J-O-N-A-T-H-A-N, L-C-H-A-M-A-N.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir, if you'll please take a walk up that ramp and then have a seat on the witness stand here to my right. And you'll see a little black microphone there. If you can just make sure that you're speaking into that, you can adjust it as needed. Mr. Imbordino, whenever you're ready, you may proceed with your direct examination of the witness.
All right. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Can you please tell the jury your name?
Jonathan Lockman,
And how do you spell your last name?
L-A-A-K-M-A-N.
I suppose I should have asked you to spell Jonathan as well, but
J-O-N-A-T-H-A-N.
thank you. Mr. Lockman, how old are you, sir?
38 years old.
Are you employed?
I am.
What kind of work do you do?
We do project management for commercial doors and hardware.
All righty. Have you, were you born and raised in the Valley?
No, I've been here most of my life, though. I was born in Southern California.
Okay, well, I'm sorry about that, but how long have you lived in Arizona?
Since 1993.
Do you remember having met a young woman by the name of Alissa Turney?
Yes, sir.
Where did you meet her?
I met her in my junior year of high school at Paradise Valley.
Were you both juniors?
Yes.
When you say you met her your junior year, do you have any, I know it's been a long time ago, but do you have a recollection of approximately when during the year you first met?
It would have been in the beginning of the year. I believe it was the first semester.
All righty. And what were the circumstances of your meeting her?
We had a class together. We had a group project to work on. We had gone to somebody's house that was in part of that group, and her and I had gotten closer at that time.
All righty. So in the beginning, was it simply the relationship classmates? In other words, did it change?
Yeah, a little bit. We were friendly in the classroom. When we had this group event at this person's house, something transpired between two of the other people, and somebody was asked to leave the house on foot, go home. I took it upon myself to go stop, give that person a ride home. I think she was fond of me after that.
Okay. At some point, well, before I get there. So you're both juniors. Do you have classes together?
Just the one.
Which one was that? Do you recall?
It's American history.
And so during the school year, during the school day, would there be occasions when the two of you would run into each other?
We would see each other before school started, and then she would come into one or more of my classes throughout the day, kind of just sneak in and say hi.
Okay. I haven't been in high school in so long. Was it like a lunch break
Yes, but I don't remember participating in lunch from my junior and senior years.
Okay. And when you said you might see her before school started, do you recall what time your classes began?
I believe it was 7:30.
And how did you get to school?
That time I was driving.
Do you have any recollection of when, an approximate time that the relationship changed to a dating relationship?
It was pretty fast. And we knew of each other or we spent time in class together. And then that one incident kind of brought us together and that was official.
All right. So when you would see her away from school, what kinds of things would you do?
Mostly we would just drive around, go window shopping, go eat, just sit and talk. We had a couple places we would go and just look at the scenery.
All righty. The how long? So there's been some testimony that Alissa was reported missing on May 17th of 2001. Did your relationship, your dating relationship with her, was it still a dating relationship when she went missing?
Absolutely.
Did you ever visit her home?
Yes.
Did you ever meet her father?
Yes,
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Where is he sitting, please?
It's on my left over here.
What's he wearing today?
Blue coat and a headset.
Thank you. How many times did you visit the house?
A few dozen times over the course of 9 months or so.
All right. And how would you get to her home?
I would drive there.
Now, do you know whether or not Alissa had a car to drive?
There was a vehicle there, I think, that was earmarked for her, but I don't know its condition and I don't know that she ever did drive it.
Did you ever observe her to drive?
No.
The did you ever go on any outing with that would have included Alissa, Sarah, the defendant, and perhaps some of her brothers?
Yes.
And do you have any recollection of the approximate time that would have happened?
I don't. I could tell you the weather was good. We were outdoors during the day. It wasn't terribly hot. The location I couldn't pinpoint. It was just a pretty remote desert area, and we went out to for paintballing.
All righty. Did you ever do anything else with her family?
Her and her sister and I, possibly one or both of her brothers, had gone bowling one night.
Now, was there a prom that you attended with Alissa?
Yes.
So if assume for me that she was reported missing on May 17th, 2001, do you have a recollection of when the prom took place in relationship to May 17th?
Couldn't have been more than a couple weeks prior. It was right towards the end of that school year.
And where was the prom?
That's a tough one. A big hotel of some kind, a grand resort. That's all I can remember.
All right. Did you get dressed up?
I did.
I have a photograph here to show you. It's Exhibit 81. See, tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
So is that you on the left?
It is.
Already. And who is that on the right?
That's Alissa.
Now, I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Do you see the directing your attention to that necklace around her neck? Do you recognize that?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I had bought that for her
Special occasion, a gift?
for her birthday.
So had you seen her wear it on occasions other than the night you went to the prom?
I think she wore it all the time. I don't remember seeing her without it.
Exhibit 85 in evidence. I'm only showing this to you to see if, first of all, do you see Alissa in this picture?
Yes.
Do you see her sister, Sarah?
Yes.
Do you recognize either of the, assume that they've been identified as two of her brothers. Are these brothers that you met?
I believe so. They don't strike me as familiar. I didn't meet them more than 2 or 3 times, maybe.
All right. During the course of your relationship with Alissa, did you meet any of her girlfriends?
I don't know that they were just like her best friends, but just other people from our school that she would pal around with.
All righty. So do you remember any of the names?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
How old were you when you and Alissa first started dating?
16.
Let me show you Exhibit 83. You recognize either of the two young ladies on the other side of Alissa?
I don't, but I feel like I've seen this picture before.
Now, how did you find out? Well, first of all, did anybody tell you or notify you that Alissa was missing?
When I left work that night, I had a message, a voicemail from Michael Turney saying she was missing or questioning if I knew where she was or if she was with me.
Did you ever go to her home after having received that message?
Not straight away. It would have been a few days after.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you remember what you did when you got there to the house a few days later?
I just remember, just being with Mike, trying to figure out what happened or, what's going on and him kind of showing me, here's this, here's that, here's what I think happened. And we're trying to figure it out.
Okay. Well, what did do you remember what he told you? Here's what I think happened.
Well, he showed me a letter, told me that she had written a letter saying she was running away. She was not happy. Walked me through her bedroom, showed me what was in there. I had questioned something about some camera equipment or some sort of surveillance thing. He showed me in his bedroom where there was a small TV monitor. Said that only is working for the outside camera that's on the patio or something like that.
Okay. Did you ever observe a surveillance camera located in the carport?
I knew it existed. I don't know that I saw it with my eyes.
And how did you know it existed?
Because Alissa had told me.
Did the defendant tell you that there was this camera in the carport?
He did, yeah, because he had showed me the monitor that was recording on.
Were you aware that there was a surveillance camera in a air conditioning vent located in the living room?
Not until Detective Summershoe had notified me later.
So at the time that you knew Alissa, you were not aware of that there was such a camera?
No.
And the defendant didn't tell you about that camera? Is that
Correct.
what I understand?
Correct.
Had Alissa, anytime prior to May 17th, confided in you that she was planning on running away anywhere, California or anywhere else?
No.
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overruled, the answer may stand.
Do you recall any argument that you might have had with Alissa at the home after the defendant told you something in front of her?
Yes.
Do you remember when that happened?
Don't remember when.
Did it happen? Well, let me see. So assume her birthday was in early April. You've already told us when you recall the prom taking place, approximately. Was it before or after the prom?
I can't recall.
Did you, after that argument, did you and Alissa continue to see one another?
Yes.
What was it that prompted the argument?
That her stepfather had told me he had witnessed her with another boy, man. And I was jealous of whatever it was and trying to figure out what her side of the story was.
Alrighty. And so at some point, did you leave the house?
I did.
And did you drive away?
I did.
Now, assume for me that we have watched a video, surveillance video. You can hear tires squealing in the background. Do you think that might have been you?
It was.
So when you drove away, you were angry.
Yes.
But did you and Alissa mend fences, so to speak?
Yes.
Now, explain to us the last day of school, May 17th. Do you recall whether it was, first let me ask you, normally a regular school day for you, when would it end?
Around noon in the middle of the day.
And why was yours ending so early?
Our school had block classes. You could leave early in your juniors or senior years.
Or I don't know what that means, block classes. So
It would just come instead of a 45-minute class, it's a 90-minute class. I'm not sure the way it all works out, but you could have a late arrival or an early dismissal as a junior and senior.
and what was Alyssa's typical school schedule?
She was in school all day.
Which would mean it would end about what time?
I think 2:30, 3 o'clock, somewhere around there.
Now, on May 17th, did you see Alissa at school?
I did.
Did you see her before class started?
Yes.
Did you have any discussion maybe about what you were going to do that day or the next day?
No.
Did she describe to you any plans that she had?
No.
So at some point, that was before class started.
Correct.
Did you see her later that day?
I did.
You recall about what time?
Somewhere around 11 a.m.
And where did you see her?
She came into my classroom to tell me she was leaving
Did she tell you who she was leaving with?
with her stepdad.
Did she tell you where they were going?
She did not.
Did you ever see Alissa Turney again?
Ever.
Have you ever heard her voice again?
No.
Uh, I asked you about the surveillance camera in the carport. Do you recall there being a door that entered the kitchen area of the home from the carport?
Yes.
How many times would you say you were at that house?
30 or 40 times.
And when you would go to that house, how would you get into the house and how would you leave the house?
Always through that door.
The door in the carport.
Correct.
Can you describe, were you ever in Alyssa's bedroom?
Yes.
Can you describe it for us just generally? What do you remember about her bedroom?
Standard bedroom, small window to the front of the house, sliding closet doors.
Okay. Did Alissa have a cell phone?
I don't know.
Did you have a cell phone?
I did, but only just to carry with me to work or something. Was not, nobody had that number besides my parents or her or very few limited people.
Well, did you ever communicate with Sarah on the phone? I mean, with Alissa on the phone?
Mostly on the house phone. I don't know. I can't recall talking to her on my cell phone.
When you went into did you say that the defendant took you into his bedroom
Correct.
on the day that you went over there after you found out she was missing?
Correct.
And what is it that he showed you?
A TV monitor.
And could you see on the monitor, was it showing you views of what a camera was looking at, if you remember?
I don't recall.
Did he ever discuss with you the fact that phone calls were being recorded?
No.
Just a moment. Ron. Just another question about that. So he showed you the monitor. And did he show you how he operated it?
I don't think so.
Did he tell you why he had such a monitoring surveillance system?
I'm sure he had some reason for it, but I don't recall.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Imbordino. Mr. Jackson, any cross-examination?
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
And I just want to ask you a few questions, kind of about your relationship with Alissa.
Okay.
You were pretty jealous?
Maybe at 16 years old, I think everybody is.
You guys had a few fights and most of them were over your jealousy, correct? That's what you told the detective?
Yes.
I want to ask you about Alissa working. Do you know about how long she worked for?
I don't remember if she had the job before we started dating, but I believe she was working most of the time I knew her.
Now, obviously, I think you said that at some point during that first semester, you guys started dating, correct? Does December 1st kind of ring a bell as May 1st being your 6-month anniversary, around the time of prom?
That's
Seems about right.
about right, yeah.
And you believe she was working at that time, correct?
Correct.
And I want to ask you about, were you ever with her when she collected paychecks?
I don't have a strong memory of it.
Were you aware if she ever had a bank account?
I don't recall.
Do you remember telling the detective when you were interviewed that you did not believe she had a bank account and that she would cash her checks
I don't recall.
and that she would keep her money in her purse?
I do not recall that.
Now, you said you were unaware of whether she had a cell phone,
Correct.
so you don't remember communicating with her on that cell phone?
No.
On the day that Alissa ran away, You-
Objection.
I haven't heard the question yet.
on the day that Alissa left the runaway note, you were at work, you believe?
Correct.
And you believe you received a call, you had a missed call from the home phone?
I don't know where the call came from, but the message was on my cell phone.
So you actually had a voice message.
Correct.
And when you got out of work, you listened to that voice message.
Correct.
And it was
Michael.
Michael telling you that Alissa had ran away or asking you if you knew where she was.
Could have been just, hey, this is Mike, give me a call and you talk to you. I don't remember the context of the message
But at some point you did call him back
immediately.
and you guys had a discussion.
Yes.
Do you know how long that discussion lasted?
I don't.
5-10 minutes, or was it
5 minutes.
brief? Okay. And in that conversation, he told you that she left a runaway note.
I don't know if that's when I knew about the note.
But you knew that she had ran away.
I knew that she was not at home.
Okay. Did he ask you where if she was with you?
He did.
And you told him.
She was not.
And then you came over to the house. Did you come over to the house that night?
I don't think so.
Okay. At some point, you did come over to the house, correct?
Correct.
And you actually took the necklace back that you gave her, correct?
Correct.
Where was that necklace?
On a nightstand next to her bed.
Okay. And so you took that. Did you tell anyone you were taking it?
I don't think so.
Do you know when that was?
Just in the few days after she went missing.
Now, you had more conversations with Michael as days passed, correct?
Correct.
And at some point, he actually gave you a phone number, correct?
He did.
And what did you do with that number?
I called it many times.
Who did you believe that number to be?
It's supposed to have been an aunt in California.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
You called that number, you left messages?
I did.
Anybody ever contact you back?
No.
Now, at some point, did you actually see the note that was left?
I did.
Do you know when that was?
It would have been the day I went to the house to meet with Michael and talk about it.
And you remember saying in an interview that it looked like her handwriting and it sounded like her.
Yes.
You were asked on direct about whether she had ever talked about running away. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
And your answer was?
No.
But she told you on other occasions that she didn't want to live with her dad, correct?
Correct.
Now you talked about the incident where you and Alissa got into an argument. She threw the phone. You were confronting her about cheating on you, correct?
Correct.
And you don't really remember when that was?
I don't.
Do you remember if it was before or after prom?
I believe it was before.
Did she ever admit to you that she was cheating?
She did not.
Did you think she was cheating on you?
No.
In any of your arguments that you had with Alissa, have you ever grabbed her violently?
No.
Now, in regards to the conversation you had with the detectives and a bank account, do you remember them asking you that question?
Yes.
But you don't remember what your answer was.
I believe I told him I didn't know about a bank account.
You said you didn't think so, correct?
Right. Correct.
And that you believe she cashed her checks at Jack in the Box,
I
actually,
thought so. Yeah.
and she would keep her money in her purse.
Correct.
So you never went with her to a bank to cash checks, correct?
Not that I can remember.
And you guys, did you spend every weekend together?
Yes.
You didn't. There wasn't times that she went out on her own.
I can't recall.
Are you aware of an incident in May or April where she had a boy over at the house and they were making out?
No.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Immordino, any redirect?
I do, but I think we need to approach.
You want to be on the record?
Yes.
Okay.
Counsel asked you if you were aware of a bank account. You said you weren't. He asked you if you ever observed Alissa cash checks and keep money in her purse. I think your answer was, I never saw her cash checks. Did she carry a purse?
Not typically.
Did you see her with cash?
Sometimes, not an overwhelming amount of cash.
Okay, when you say overwhelming amount, what do you mean?
She wasn't walking around with thousands of dollars.
Okay, where would she keep it?
Pockets that I can remember
Did she have a backpack? Do you recall?
for school. I don't know if, outside of school, if she carried a backpack. I can't remember.
All righty. Maybe I don't need to, but just to clarify something. So the necklace that you've described to us that you gave to Alissa for her birthday, you told us that she wore it constantly, correct? And so when you took the necklace, this was after she had been reported missing, correct? When you went over to the house after you'd been notified by the defendant that he couldn't find Alissa.
Correct.
And it was in her bedroom
Yes.
and it was on the table next to the bed.
Yes.
And you took the necklace.
I did.
Did you keep the necklace?
For a while. Yes.
Okay. Why did you take it?
It was my memory of her. It's something that I can reclaim and hold on to.
All right. That's all I have, Your Honor. Yes.
No objection.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused. And the state may call its next witness.
Stu. Yeah.
And give the clerk your name and she'll swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir, if you'll please take a walk up the ramp and have a seat on the witness stand here to my right. Mr. Bordino, you may proceed with your direct examination of the witness whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm going to let him, Your Honor, he's got a laptop that contains his police reports. So I'm going to let him, if you don't mind, get set up for just a moment.
I guess, Your Honor, I would just ask that if he's looking at or referring to it, that he lets us know that he's looking at it. Okay. Thank you.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Stuart Summershoe.
Are you recently retired from the Phoenix Police Department?
Yes, I retired in December of last year.
But are you,
Justice Training Center. I teach missing person material throughout the United States. I also volunteer with Team Adam, which is through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
let's talk about your career as a police officer. When did you first become a police officer?
I joined the Phoenix Police Department in 1996.
And did you, your retirement date, was that this year?
December of 2022.
So I would assume, and what would have been your first duties as a police officer?
I was assigned as a patrol officer for about the first 10 years of my career. I started in Central City Precinct, which is kind of the downtown area. And then after that, I went up to Cactus Park Precinct, which is area of like 35th Avenue and Cactus. I was there for a year, then came back to Central City Precinct.
In the course of those 10 years, did you respond to any crime scenes where violence had been committed?
Yes, many of them.
Can you describe for us the kind of situations that you encountered?
It covered the gambit from homicides, shootings, aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, accidents, pretty much everything, every bad thing. Yeah, I went to.
Okay. As a patrol officer, did you ever have occasion to respond to a missing persons report?
Yes, that was a fairly common call we would go to.
And when you say fairly common, what do you mean?
Almost every shift, there would be a missing juvenile, missing person report that would come in.
Yeah, maybe I should have limited it to, and if we use the term juvenile here today, what would the age range be?
Under 18.
So if a person, is there a difference between a missing persons report and a runaway report for police officers?
I mean, they're all missing juvenile reports, but they can be classified or subtitled as a runaway juvenile. So a runaway juvenile is someone who's willfully left their home, and there's evidence that they have gone on their own free will. Whereas a missing juvenile report, there may not be an explanation for the disappearance.
When did you, at some point in your career, did you were you assigned to a missing persons unit?
Yes, in December 2007, I became a missing person detective for the city of Phoenix.
So for the first 10 years, you're a patrol officer. Where did you go after that?
That was the rest of my career. So about 15 years I spent as a missing person detective.
And describe for these folks, what did you do every day?
We received, it varied year to year, but on average about 7,000 missing person, missing juvenile reports a year. So I was one of a squad of detectives that handled those, and they would be assigned alphabetically by the missing person's last name. So in the 15 years I was there, I probably handled 10,000 missing person, missing juvenile reports.
So if an individual, let's say a parent makes a phone call to the Phoenix Police Department to say, my child has run away or my child is missing, I don't know where they are. What's their first contact?
Well, I mean, the report is filed through a police officer. It could be by phone or it could be in person. The officer takes the initial report. The missing person or missing juvenile gets entered into NCIC immediately.
So yeah, and I didn't ask my question very well, I don't think. They call in. So where does their call get routed?
It comes through our 911 dispatch, and then it would be assigned to a dispatcher to send an officer out, or there's a callback center that would take sometimes reports by phone.
In this particular case, did you review the records?
Yes.
How was the initial notification made?
It was taken by a callback officer.
And would they prepare a report?
Yes,
And did they prepare a report?
they did.
What do those reports typically contain?
It contains a description of the missing person, the reporting party, basic details of the disappearance, any facts provided by the reporting party, any unusual circumstances, any information they provide.
So would it include a description of the child?
Yeah, it would include, eye color, hair color, height, weight, any distinguishing features like scars or tattoos, that sort of thing.
Date of birth?
Yes.
Now, I think you may have mentioned this earlier. Once that report is taken, is there any sort of national database that information is put into?
Yeah, when somebody's reported missing to law enforcement, they are put into the NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center. Basically, that's a database that all law enforcement uses. If they query somebody's name, it places an alert on that person's name, date of birth, so they will be informed that the person is missing.
In this particular case, did you become aware that the initial date of birth was incorrect?
Yes, in the initial report, it's incorrect, but it was correctly entered in the NCIC.
All right. So let me just ask you a couple of questions about NCIC. So let's say that individual who's been reported missing is involved in an incident in California or New York or Florida or wherever, and a local police officer has their name, date of birth, that sort of information. Assuming they check, then am I understanding you to say that they would be alerted that this person has been reported missing?
Yeah, they would receive a notification either through their dispatch or through their mobile data computer that the person is reported missing. Also, NCIC will then alert the agency that filed the missing person report that, hey, this person's name was queried. The algorithm also allows for date of birth hits or sound alikes.
What do you mean by sound alikes?
If a similar name was ran, it would come up as a possible match to your missing person.
And then what would, let's say you got that notification, what would you then do?
You would look at it, see if it is the missing person. If there needs to be follow-up, to contact that agency, say, hey, did you contact this missing person? But it depends on how common the name is. If you have somebody named John Smith, you're going to get a lot of those coming in.
Okay. What would okay. In the course of your years in the missing persons unit, did you ever receive such notifications?
Yes, every day.
So let's assume that you got enough information that caused you to do further investigation to see if this actually was the missing persons. How would you go about doing that?
Well, I mean, if we believed it was a valid query on our missing person, we would contact that agency. Typically, most agencies, when they contact a missing person, especially a missing juvenile, they will complete a report and notify. They'll send a teletype to us saying, hey, we had contact with this missing person. So then we would reach out. What was the circumstances? What happened to this person? What were they, what they were doing? If it's juvenile, they would be taken into custody. An adult, it's more of a check welfare situation.
Once you began working on an individual case of a missing juvenile, what would you what would you normally do? Let's say you had been notified of this particular report that Alissa Turney had allegedly run away, left a note that had come to your attention.
Typically for missing juvenile reports, we do a lot of research on the person because we're trying to understand why they went missing, why they disappeared. So obviously we do background checks through our databases to see if their name is inquired, if they've been involved in any other police incidents. We would do searches through social media, try to identify any accounts that are associated with them. After that, once we establish all the information is correct and entered, we would typically we would reach out to family. In the absence of not having the missing person that we could talk to, we want to try to gather as much information about the missing person. So we would talk to their family, we would talk to their parents, siblings, distant relatives, aunts, uncles, grandparents. We would ask friends, romantic interests, coworkers, classmates. What we're trying to do is establish a life pattern to see if this disappearance is explainable. Have they ever run away before? Do they have medical issues? Are they suicidal? Is there something going on that would explain this disappearance?
Let me interrupt you just for a moment. In reviewing the case file in this case, the kinds of things you just described, were they done in 2001?
There's not much documentation. The detective back then wasn't really documenting what was being done, so I don't know.
So it wasn't done. Was it done the way you would have done it?
No, I would have handled this differently.
Who was that detective?
Detective Schoenfelder?
Is he retired now or no longer working for the department?
Yes, he's retired.
Would you have gone to the residence?
Yeah, that's something we often do. We would like to go to where the missing juvenile lives, see their room. We're looking for, again, information that will give us insight into who they are and what is motivating this disappearance. So we would look for diaries, journals, anything that would indicate, what their life is, what their life pattern is, and what's going on, who they're associating with. If there's a cell phone, we would like to look at that. Again, social media. Back in 2001, that wasn't really an issue, but nowadays it's more of an issue, and that gives you a lot of insight into somebody because people, put a lot of their personal information, their personal activity onto their social media.
A few moments ago, you were giving some examples of how you would go about investigating a missing persons case. And I just want to ask you to go into a little more detail for these folks who might not be familiar with some of the ways in which you go about doing that. So entering them into the NCIC database is not the only thing you do.
Yes, there's other databases. There's a database called NamUs, which is the National Missing and Unidentified Person System. That came into place in 2007. It's a database for missing persons and unidentified remains that are in the United States. We also do media outreach. We utilize the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. NCMEC is its acronym. And they are an organization started by John Walsh in the 90s. They work closely with law enforcement. They have a national media platform, so they'll create bulletins. They have access to a lot of databases to check records and things like that. We are also making checks with Social Security Administration to see whether a person's used their Social Security. We're checking financial records, telephone records, that sort of thing.
So what's an offline search?
An offline search is, so if you were stopped by the police or you're part of an investigation and they query your name. So if you're in a traffic stop and the officer goes back to his car, typically he's running a criminal records check through NCIC. So that gets logged with the FBI sieges. And so they maintain a record of any query of a person, vehicle, it could be serial numbers, that sort of thing.
Sir, if you could do me a favor, get a little closer to
sorry.
the microphone.
Serial numbers of a gun or a stolen item or something like that. And they can go back and check those back to 1990.
In 2001, were those offline searches available?
Yes.
And we said you would typically check with Social Security Administration. Were you provided was the department provided a Social Security number for Alissa?
Yes.
Now, when were you first assigned to this investigation?
September of 2008.
And would you had a sergeant in charge of that unit?
Yeah, Sergeant Brian Chapman was my supervisor.
So would he have assigned the case to you?
He approached me with the case and said it was going to get assigned to Detective Anderson, but that I would be assisting him.
All right. So both you and Detective Anderson began working on it in, did you say 2007?
2008.
2008, I'm sorry. When you got assigned the case, then what sort of documents did you have to review, if any?
I reviewed the case file, which contained a number of, the basic report and the supplements, and contained some letters from Michael Turney within it. And there was flyers from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and basic parts of the investigation.
You mentioned a moment ago that in reviewing the case file that you observed some documents, communications, I think you said, from the defendant to the police department.
Yes.
Did you observe a letter from the defendant expressing his appreciation for Detective Schoenfelder and Sergeant Bob White?
Yes.
May I approach?
You may.
Yes, this is the letter that was in the case file.
Remove the admission of Exhibit 111.
Any objection from the defense?
1 second.
Exhibit 111 is admitted. Angela will need the visualizer.
For the record, I'm displaying Exhibit 111, two-page letter. There are numbers at the bottom, 001900, 001901. You recognize this letter, correct?
Yes.
And Detective Schoenfelder, again, was whom?
He was the original detective assigned to the case.
Who would Sergeant Bob White have been?
He was a missing person sergeant at the time.
When you and Detective Anderson were assigned the investigation and reviewed the case file, did you observe any information contained in the case file as to whether or not Alissa had been seen by anyone, heard from by anyone since May 17th of 2001?
No, there was no trace of her after that.
Were you made aware of the defendant reporting having received a phone call from California?
Yes.
And that call, in this particular letter, he's referencing his um, attempts to obtain information from where that call came from, what the number was, correct?
Yes.
Was there any sort of recording of such a call in the case file?
No.
Let me ask you to assume, I don't remember the exhibit number, it's in evidence. At some point, did you see the original and or a copy of a note reportedly left by Alissa in her bedroom on May 17th?
Yes.
Was the note in the case file,
A copy of it was.
not the original?
No.
Did you ever obtain the original?
Yes.
When did you obtain the original?
December 2008.
Did you do any, the types of searches that you have described to us that you would typically do for someone like Alissa, the offline search, the ways you would go about trying to find any information about her? Did you do that when you were assigned the case?
Yes, we did a complete search for Alissa through our criminal databases, the national databases through the FBI, also through information sources that, there's companies out there that collect information about people through applications of jobs, of financial records, things like that. So there was no trace of her after May 17th.
And has that been done? I mean, do you just do it once?
No, we repeatedly do it. And again, NCIC, she's listed in NCIC, so any query by her name prompts a notification to us and a notification to the querying agency.
So has the Phoenix Police Department ever received any information about Alissa being seen, heard, found since May 17th?
No.
Any record of her having a job anywhere?
No, her social security number was only used for the Jack in the Box job and hasn't been used since.
When you and Detective Anderson were assigned the case, did you make an effort to contact Michael Turney?
No, he actually had named Sarah as the family contact and indicated he didn't want contact.
Did you contact Sarah?
Detective Anderson did, yes.
Did you ever meet Michael Turney?
I did.
And do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, he's seated at the defense table wearing a blue suit.
When did you first meet him in person?
I met him, I believe, in September of 2008 when Detective Anderson and Detective Bruja and I went to the house on a meeting to look at Alissa's possessions.
How was that meeting arranged?
Through Sarah.
So you go to the house now, and did you realize that by that point in time, the defendant and Sarah had moved across the street?
Yes.
From the original house where Alissa was living?
Yes.
So you show up at the door. What happens?
We are invited into like the entryway, and there is a plastic tub there, and we were told that that's what's left of Alissa's possessions, and that we can look through it.
Were you expecting more?
Yeah, we had brought a truck and 3 detectives in anticipation that we'd have a large, a lot of evidence to pick up and go through.
Why were you under that impression?
Detective Anderson was told that was
Objection here, sir.
16.
So it wasn't a communication that you had received personally?
No.
In any event, you get this, there's a tub, like what size?
I don't know what the dimensions were, but basically a large box, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, plastic, kind of plastic coat you would get at a Walmart, that sort of thing.
What was in it?
There were Alissa's yearbooks, a few items, toy items and things like that. Not really that much.
Were you provided any surveillance videos?
Yes, surveillance videos were provided to us.
At that time?
I'm not quite sure if it was that particular visit. I believe that there was one provided at that time.
And did you watch the video?
Yes.
What was that particular surveillance video?
Well, I mean, there's two videos that were provided to us during these couple of weeks. One was an argument between John and Alissa, or was described as an argument between John and her boyfriend and Alissa. And the other one was a video of Alissa, I guess, making out with a boy in the house.
Were you, did you ask for did the subject of a video from the day of May 17th come up in that meeting?
Yes, we were told that there was video surveillance of the day she went missing, and that 8 hours of it had been reviewed. We wanted to see that video to see what we could see, what, you know, her coming home, her leaving, that what she was wearing, that sort of thing.
Okay. Did you receive such a video?
No.
Did you ask for it?
Yes.
What was the response?
I believe he said he didn't have it anymore.
Now, having watched the two videos that were provided, why would you have liked to have had the one from the day she went missing?
The videos we were provided showed that there was internal camera and an external camera. So the internal camera appeared to be an event in the living room area, which is the main thoroughfare of the house. In the video, you could see, and there was sound to it. You know, theoretically, that video would show her coming home with her father on the day she went missing, him leaving, her leaving, but we didn't have that. The other angle of the camera covered the carport area, so it covered the main thoroughfares of the house.
Did you inquire in this particular meeting if there was a recording of this phone call from California?
I didn't personally ask that. Detective Anderson did.
All righty. How long were you at the house that day?
It was a very brief meeting. We're probably there 15 minutes, 20 minutes at most.
Now, did you go back to the neighborhood after that date?
Yes, we did a canvas of the neighborhood, which is basically, it's a search for witnesses or people with information. So since we were in the neighborhood, as a courtesy, we stopped by the Turney house to let them know we would be in the neighborhood and handing out flyers and talking to people.
Okay. Did he invite you in?
No, he met us at the door.
Did he say anything to you as you were leaving?
He said he wanted a resolution to this by November, or he would take some kind of legal action.
So you did a canvas of the neighborhood. Describe what that is.
A canvas is, we send a team of detectives. I think we had about 12 detectives who had missing person bulletins. And basically you knock on every door in the neighborhood looking for witnesses, if people might have information, people who might have known Alissa. We actually did two canvases in this case. We did a canvas in that neighborhood and then a previous neighborhood that she used to live at on Via Rita.
And were both of those done in 2008, you know, or
Yes.
Had such a canvas of the neighborhood been done previously after May 17th, 2001?
Nothing I'm aware of.
So in fairness, canvassing the neighborhood some 7 years later, one might assume that you're not going to get as much information as you might have 7 years ago.
That's correct. Yeah. People's memories fade, people move from the neighborhood and all that, but we wanted to make sure we exhausted any possible witnesses that might be out there if they still had information.
You know, Judge, I know we needed to address some issues. I think we could address some of them now. But
Okay.
The other thing I need to do is I've not learned how to use this. I think there's a CD player here, and I haven't learned how to use that yet. So,
okay,
I've got a couple of CDs I need to be able to play.
Okay. So we'll send the jury to lunch. We'll ask you to be back at 1:15 since we're breaking for lunch a little early. You can leave everything in the courtroom if you'd like. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice lunch. Jury's now excused. Please be seated.
Sorry, I apologize. I had neglected to think that I needed to practice on the CD player. So,
Let the record reflect the presence of counsel and the defendant. The jury is not present. You still want the witness on the witness stand, or?
he can be excused.
All right.
Um,
Sir, you're free to step down. We'll ask you to be back at 1:15, please.
Yeah, if you'll wait outside, I appreciate
Can I
it.
leave this stuff here?
Sure. I think it'll be safe. I thought that there was something we could do before lunch. Now I'm remembering you haven't watched the flash drives yet.
How long will it take me?
There, if you recall the PowerPoint, each clip is pretty short.
Okay. Well, why don't we just take a quick break? I'll listen to them and then I'll come back.
Thanks.
All right. We'll take a brief recess.
Your Honor, for me, real quick, I do believe we need to review the transcript to give the redactions, but actually we can work that out. That's fine. Never mind.
Mr. Imbordino.
Well, just so the record is clear, the two video clips which contain audio are part of the primetime broadcast. I did play those in my opening statement. We already expressed our position that based upon previous rulings in this case, that when Mr. Kionis asked him, did you molest Alissa? The defendant's response, and I included his response denying it, but I think because of the contract and because of the rulings, that the nature of their relationship and his concern about being accused of being molested is relevant. I specifically, you've not seen the entire broadcast, so for the record, if you watch the entire broadcast, they obviously interviewed people, reviewed documents in preparation for it. So, and giving background of the case, they reference some of the claims that we've heard about that we've not been allowed to get into because they're hearsay. So I purposely avoided any of that background information. The defendant, in response to Mr. Kionis, says that's just rumors and innuendo, but Mr. Kionis did not refer to them. The defendant did. In any event, the audio clip, informed counsel, it's only audio because when you watch the original broadcast, he is being interviewed while he is awaiting trial on the federal charges. And at the end of the broadcast, it becomes very apparent, at least to me, it might not have been to the jurors, that he is wearing prison garb, so to speak. So I purposely did not try to play the video or show the video. Only the audio, Mr. Kionis asking him, would you be willing to talk to detectives? And the defendant says, I don't remember his exact words. Basically, I've said I'll talk to them. I don't remember exactly, but his offer to speak with them. In response to that, a phone call was made to the defendant asking to talk to him about Alissa, and he declined to talk about Alissa. He was in custody when they called on the federal charges. He obviously had a right to not talk to the police about the federal charges, but he just declined to talk about Alissa, not about they weren't trying to talk to him about the bomb charges. So anyway, that's.
So you're seeking to admit all three clips.
Yes, sir.
And in regard to the audio clip where he says that he would talk to detectives, were you then going to follow up with questions to a witness where they tried to interview him and he declined.
Yes.
Okay. I now understand what you're asking and what is the defense position.
On the clip about the interview, do you want to start with that one?
Where you will start wherever you'd like.
Um, the problem with the clip from the interview about asking Mike if he would consent to an interview is that it's essentially a backdoor way for the state to be able to comment on Mike's silence. As Mr. Imbordino stated, Mike did invoke his right to remain silent when the police reached out to him while he was in custody. The case law is very clear that even if you're in custody, even if it's for something else and the police contact you and you say you don't want to talk to them, they must honor that. Implicit in the Miranda warnings are that your silence will not be used against you. The state is trying to backdoor this in to somehow insinuate that he wasn't cooperating. They can't introduce it in their case in chief. That's defense's position.
All right. And then what is the defense position?
And Judge, I believe that Mr. Imbordino also sent over Judge Ryan Tuhill's ruling to you as well. And in her ruling, her ruling was that the state could not comment on, or essentially that they could only talk about pre-Miranda statements or cooperation with the police. Mr. Turney was Mirandized in 2008 after he was arrested subsequent to the search warrant. He unequivocally invoked his right to counsel at that moment. And then again, he invokes his right to remain silent. It's inappropriate.
And then what is your position in regard to the 2 video clips?
The other 2020 clip where he's asking him about molest, again, defense objects to that. I mean, we objected on the record when it was played. However, the problem with that clip is that it specifically references rumors. Those rumors were limited out for a reason, because they're hearsay. And it's frankly 404B evidence, a back way of getting in 404B evidence without having to go through the procedural requirements of presenting that to a jury. The problem is also in that interview, the host asked him, now there are rumors that you molested Alissa. Did you molest her? Like, those are from his very mouth. It's not just from his mouth. So the problem is, it's not just a question, did you molest Alissa? It's speaking about the rumors, the exact acts which were limited out in this case.
All right. And then do you have a position on the 3rd clip, which is asking why the tapes don't, why didn't you provide any video of the day she disappeared or recordings? I think
Yeah,
that was,
we didn't get that one.
Mr. Imbordino, wasn't that the second video clip?
It's in the PowerPoint.
What? It wasn't in your PowerPoint. There was only 2 clips in your PowerPoint.
That's what he's talking about. It's in the PowerPoint. They've been provided a copy of the primetime broadcast. So
Yeah, but we don't.
I guess I'm not- I guess
Yeah, we're not sure which clip
I'm a
that
bit
is, so we'll
objecting about
watch
it. I'm
it.
confused
Yeah.
on I'm confused on what they're asking this time.
Watch the video clip. It's only a minute long.
On here.
There's 3.
For 3.
2 videos.
I think it's number 1. I think it's the clip that's numbered number 1. No, not that one. Oh yeah, it is that one.
Oh, that's the one.
You can come tell.
I mean, I guess I have an objection that I guess it cuts off his answer. I mean, it's basically the narrator's question instead of his answer.
It's argumentative.
It ends. So the clip is cut off before Mr. Turney answers the question. So that entire clip is mostly the narrator testifying. So I would object to that because it doesn't, if the purpose is his answer, then play the answer. And I don't know what that clip is, if there's a reason why they cut that off. But this is the narrator who's not a witness in this case testifying. So I would object to this.
All right. So Mr. Imbordino, I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, if they want to play more of the broadcast, they were welcome to do it. They have a copy. You've listened to or viewed the video. Mr. Keonis does not refer to rumors. The defendant does. That evidence has been ruled admissible by Judge Ryan Tuhill. As to so let me put this in perspective. It's correct that after the search warrant in 2008, They asked to talk with the defendant about Alissa. He invoked. This broadcast is in 2009, a year later, approximately. The defendant, and as the court well knows, somebody can invoke, but once time passes, you have a right to attempt to talk to them again. They can invoke again if they wish. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So almost a year had passed. Not only that, it's the defendant who is initiating it. He is saying, I will talk to them. So they're not the ones that initiated this attempted conversation. The defendant offered to do it. They followed up on that. He declined.
All right. So as to the audio clip, which is the defendant offering to talk to detectives, the court's going to sustain the objection on that one. It's either directly an invocation of his Miranda right or about as close as you can get. And so I'm ruling that that one is not admissible. The clip about the defendant not providing tapes, the clip about the tapes, I think it's numbered as number 1. I find that that is admissible. If the defendant believes it's incomplete and wants to provide a more complete version, you can absolutely make that request. But at least for purposes of what the state is asking, I find that that clip is admissible. The second clip that was Mr. Turney denying any molestation. We've talked about this several times, and I've made my ruling several times. Judge Toohill did definitely address that the nature of their relationship was admissible. I have already ruled that the defendant denying molesting Alissa is admissible. The only reason that molestation is in the case is because it's part of the contract that he created. So if it was anything other than him denying molesting, this would be a different conversation and a different ruling. But I have considered the probative value and the danger of unfair prejudice. I'm going to allow the admission of the 2 video clips with the understanding the defense may ask to admit a longer, more complete video clip, and the audio clip is inadmissible. Any questions about the court's ruling?
The state does not have any, no. There we go.
All right. Anything else we can talk about before we break for lunch?
I haven't addressed the Exhibit 91 yet.
The phone call.
Phone call.
We have to go through that.
When you say we have to go through that, do you mean you're not ready to argue it yet?
It's the difference. I'm ready to
Oh,
discuss
okay.
that. That's the
Sorry.
phone call. with
Oh,
Lynette and Alyssa.
another one. Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Burdino, you're going to seek to admit a recording, an audio recording of a phone conversation between Alissa and her aunt.
Correct.
All right. And what is the objection?
It's hearsay, Your Honor. It's not in close in time. There's no exceptions. They're just trying to get her statements out and Lynette's statements out.
All right. And what is the state's response to that?
Basically, the same response I gave earlier for the same kind of phone call. There is a discussion, well, you heard it. So there's a discussion that about the relationship between Alissa and her father. And Lynette is, I think, telling her, you can always call me. So quite frankly, not sure why they're objecting to it. I mean, they want everyone to believe that she ran away to California. I mean, but again, I think it goes to her state of mind at the time. They're obviously talking.
And Mr. Burdino, what was the time? I don't know that I know when that call was made.
Yeah, well, we don't have an exact time because these recordings they were on a cassette tape, which didn't have, dates of the individual calls, which is found in the defendant's possession during the search warrant.
Okay. I'm going to think about that one. My only well, first of all, I agree with the state that I'm not sure why the defense is objecting. The call seems to support the defense theory of the case.
But if you,
Hold on. You don't have to answer
well, no,
that.
but because it actually is something that is derogatory that's brought up in there that makes there's a allegation of racism and that because the person was black. I mean, there's a lot of things that makes it highly prejudicial and more prejudicial than probative. And it's hearsay.
I agree with Mr. Burdino that the call does have Alissa talking about her relationship with her father. So for that reason, the court would be inclined to admit it, but because we don't know the time frame, I'm unsure. And Mr. Imbordino, is it your position that we're never going to know the time frame?
It is an edited version of this phone call. Eventually, the defendant gets on the line and talks to Aunt Lynette. It's about an hour and a half long. I'll have to look at the transcript again to see if anything that he says during that part of the conversation, because they talk about a lot of things not really relevant to this particular case. They're more about problems the defendant is having. So that's why I edited it. I'll see if I can find some reference that gives us a clue. I will let you know.
All right. Well, my rulings up to this point have tried to limit the evidence regarding their relationship to at or near the time she disappeared, and I intend to be consistent. So until the state can give me some additional information as to the time frame, I'm going to deny admission, subject to the request being re-urged if you have additional information.
Thank you.
Anything else before we break for lunch?
No.
All right. We'll see you at 1:15.
The house across the street.
Wonder what?
I'm sorry. April 3rd.
I don't see it. Oh, interesting.
You see that?
Oh, fancy. Oh,
Unless you're like directly behind, you can't see anything. If you're at an angle.
maybe you're option it then.
Please be seated. We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Sorry for that short delay. We had some technical difficulties, but they appear to now be resolved. And Mr. Imbordino, you may resume your direct examination of your witness whenever you're ready.
Thank you. And the we was me.
I didn't want to blame anybody.
All right. So I think when we stopped this morning, I had asked you about the two occasions that you saw the defendant at the house across the street from where Alissa had been living when she went missing. So now let me ask you, because you detailed this morning things that you would like to have had done when this investigation first began, before you even took it over. And I think one of the things you said was, for example, to interview family and friends. Is that right?
Yes.
So during the course of your investigation into this case, did you do that?
Yes. We interviewed almost 200 people in this case.
And I'm not asking you to give us their names, but what can you just describe generally who they were? Family, girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever?
We interviewed immediate family, siblings. We interviewed grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. We interviewed her boyfriend, co-workers, classmates, people she had interacted with in the previous neighborhood. We interviewed pretty much anybody we could find that knew Alissa at any point in her life.
Okay. You mentioned, I think I heard you say aunts. So we've had some reference in this case to an Aunt Lynette. Did you talk to her?
I did.
In person or by phone?
By phone.
And what was your reason in talking to her?
She lived in California, and We became aware that there was some communication between her and Alissa before her disappearance.
So once you completed those interviews, did you have any, were you able to locate Alissa?
No.
The next time that you saw the defendant at the house across the street, when was that?
After those initial 2 visits, or
Yes.
it was in December
Of what year?
of 2008.
And what was the purpose for going to that residence?
We executed a search warrant there.
And did the search warrant just include that house?
No, we also had a search warrant for the house across the street where Alissa went missing from.
Let me ask you about that first. The home across the street where Alissa had lived. Was anyone living there when you conducted your search?
Yeah, there was a new resident in there.
And so what did the search consist of?
We were looking for a possible crime scene, any kind of evidence of something that happened to Alissa there.
And did you find anything?
No.
Again, do you know how long that new family had been living there?
I believe that he'd been there for a number of years. I think there might have been at least 2 residents that had lived there since the Turney family had moved out.
So let's go to the search of the defendant's residence. Did that include the house across the street, where they were living in 2008? You searched the interior of the home,
Yes.
the garage,
Yes.
any other buildings on the property?
In the backyard, we had cadaver dogs run through the location.
Now, in the course of that search, were documents found?
Yes, many, many documents.
Were VHS tapes found?
Yes, hundreds of them.
Were cassette tapes found?
Yes, hundreds of them.
So let's talk about did you seize those items?
Yes, we seized all the audio tapes, VHS tapes, and then documents and computers, storage devices.
And where did you take it?
It was impounded at our property bureau
And how was it transported?
through a police van.
Can you estimate for us the number of audio cassette tapes?
I would say at least 500 of them.
And what about VHS
At
video
least-
tapes?
At least 500 of those also.
At some point during the course of this investigation, did Phoenix police detectives and personnel listen to those cassette recordings?
Yes.
Did they view the VHS tapes?
Yes.
Were all of the VHS tapes surveillance video?
No, there was commercial tapes mixed in there. Some of them had been burned to DVDs and things like that. So yeah, there was a mixture of everything in there. Family home videos.
The cassette tapes, the audio cassette tapes. What, just a general description of the types of conversations?
The audio tapes were from I guess the recording system that was on the family phone. So a typical tape would record all the incoming and outgoing phone calls that came into the house. So you would have, innocuous phone calls to check to see, what the movie times were playing at a certain particular date. You would have conversations from salespeople. You'd have personal family conversations. You would have Alissa talking to people. You would have Michael talking to people, Sarah talking to people. These tapes covered decades. It was almost like a wiretap that went on for decades. I think the oldest tape I found was from the 1970s, all the way up to the day of the search warrant.
Any recording of a phone call from California on May 24th, 2001?
No.
You were asking, the date that you asked was May 24?
I'm sorry. Yes, May 24th. The date that eventually phone records were obtained, which did demonstrate a call came from California, correct?
Yes.
On or about the 24th of May.
Yes.
Now, the defendant himself obtained those records, correct, from the can't remember if it was Quest or not.
It was Quest.
And eventually you were provided a record of demonstrating such a call came in.
Yes.
You recall the time of day?
I believe it was 5:02 in the morning. I could check my report to refresh my memory and verify that.
In any event, you did not recover a recording of that call,
No.
assuming one existed. It wasn't in the items seized from the house.
No.
You mentioned earlier today that in that initial visit at the home, you had inquired or asked about, and maybe it wasn't you, I may be misstating this, but did you tell us it was Detective Anderson who asked about a videotape from the day she went missing?
Yes.
Sorry. In any event, in reviewing the 500 or so VHS tapes, was a surveillance video discovered dated May 17th of 2001?
No.
Any VHS tape discovered showing the events as they had been described, which we've not gotten into yet, by the defendant?
No.
No VHS tape marked by the defendant as May 17th. This is the day she went missing.
No.
These videotapes that were viewed, did they have date and time stamps on them?
No. Um, some of the tapes we hand marked with a date or.
I am moving to admit Exhibit 99, Your Honor, which is the surveillance video from the events surrounding the argument between Mr. Lockman and Alissa Turney.
Any objection?
No objection from defense.
Exhibit 99 is admitted.
I guess let's ask you first, have you seen this particular video yourself?
Yes, I have.
Generally describe for us what we're going to witness.
This is a surveillance video, which depicts the location of the cameras. There's a camera in the vent in the living room, and then there's a camera that covers the main house entry in the carport area. So this will show a purported argument between John and her boyfriend Alissa, where they will have a confrontation. She will throw the phone against the wall, and he will leave. And then she picks up the phone and comes back inside, and you can see her crying on the couch.
And I guess I neglected to ask you, when you conducted a search of the residence where Alissa was living when she went missing, did you look for surveillance cameras?
Yes.
Find any?
In the location where the house they used to live?
Yes.
No, there wasn't any surveillance then.
Before you press play, are any of the jurors having any difficulty seeing the screen? Sometimes there's a glare from the lights. I can dim the lights if any of you are having trouble seeing. Looks like nobody's having trouble. Okay.
I'm going to pause it for just a moment. So having watched this before, does it show Mr. Lockman coming back to the house at all?
No, he does not.
Now, it appears that when this recording is being made, that it's switching between the carport camera and the one in the living room. Do I have that correct?
Yes, it seemed like the system was automatically set up to switch between those two cameras.
So once what we're looking at here, is this a copy of how the Phoenix Police Department received it? I mean, in other words, did the Phoenix Police Department edit it in any way?
No, this is what Mr. Turney gave us.
He actually, let me just ask you about that. Were two VHS tapes recovered or received during the investigation of this event?
Yes.
Was one of them at the house during the search?
So two tapes were provided to us by the defendant. One was this tape. One was the tape of Alissa with another boy on the couch. And then during the search warrant, we recovered multitude other tapes. One of them was a copy of this one.
Okay. Were there, had somebody written a date on the outside of the VHS tape?
In the copy that we found, the date 5/16.
And what about the other one? What was the date on the other one?
The one that was provided to us, I'm not sure if there's a date on that or not.
I'll wait and ask Detective Anderson about that.
Okay.
Anything with the remaining?
Between the two, there's a house, but there's no other interaction with anybody else.
As part of your investigation, did you obtain some school records for Alissa from Barry Goldwater High School?
Yes.
Move the admission of Exhibit 101.
Any objection?
No objection from defense.
Exhibit 101 is admitted.
May I approach?
You may.
Do you recognize the document?
Yes.
So whoops, got to switch back to the Elmo. Sorry. I did. Oh, thought it was on. There we go. All right, Detective, can you see the screen?
Yes.
So it appears we're looking at grades from, including December of 1998, December of 1999, May of 99, May of 2000, correct?
Yes.
And so there was a C in biology,
Yes.
an A in language art,
Yes.
an A in pre-algebra,
Yes.
a D in, you know what DES fundamental was?
I don't know.
In 99, there was a D in biology, correct?
Yes.
In any event, these were grades that were reflected from her school records for those dates and times.
Yes.
At Barry Goldwater, not at Paradise Valley High School, correct?
That's correct.
In the course of your investigation, did you discover, well, in your course of the search of the house, did you discover records from Desert Schools Credit Union?
Yes, there were some bank receipts and things like that. Yes.
Well, let me
You may.
show you exhibits 104 and 105.
Yeah, these are financial records that were recovered during our investigation.
We would move to admit exhibits 104 and 105.
Any objection?
No objection from defense.
Exhibits 104 and 105 are admitted.
So let me, did you discover that Alissa had an account at this credit union?
Yes.
Was she shown as the owner of the account?
Yes.
Putting exhibit 104 on the screen. And the address is the address on 34th Street where Alissa was living when she went missing, correct?
That's correct.
So these records show that at the time of her disappearance, approximately how much money was in that account?
She had over $1,800 in her account at the time.
And approximately a few months later, was that money transferred?
Yes, Alyssa's account was emptied and transferred to Sarah's account.
Exhibit 105 is a record of the defendant's account there, correct?
Yes.
Did you note a transfer of money on or about the 26th of April, 2001?
Yes. On that date, the defendant transferred $300 to Alyssa's account.
With reference to Alyssa's account, did the defendant make any statements about leaving it open for her in the beginning?
Yeah, he indicated initially that he was leaving it open to see if she would access it.
Was there ever any evidence that it was accessed before the money was transferred to Sarah's account?
No.
And did he make any statements as to why he did that, transferred it?
He wanted to, I guess, not give her the ability to access money if she was out there somewhere.
You mentioned the organization and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I have the hardest time with NCMEC. I'm not sure why, but so did you recover a document the defendant authored on May 25th, 2001 to them?
Yes.
Your Honor, should I ask to approach each time?
You do not need to, as long as you've done it once with each witness.
Do you recognize it?
Yes.
Move to admit Exhibit 94.
Any objection?
Right, no objection.
Exhibit 94 is admitted.
So for the record, it consists of 4 pages, correct?
Correct.
Dated May 25th, 2001.
Yes.
Missing exploited children, correct?
Yes.
With a signature of Michael Turney, correct?
Yes.
Or I'm going to request the witness read the letter.
You may. Sir, just remember there's a court reporter and sometimes people tend to read faster than they talk. So
Okay.
be kind to her.
I will. The letter begins, to whom it may concern. Thank you for the forms and the service you are offering to assist me in locating my 17-year-old daughter. My daughter and I had both a amicable and adversarial relationship, in part due to her condition and in part due to continuous outside intervention by private citizens and governmental agencies. Alissa is a true ADD that medications did not help. Only a structured lifestyle with good eating and sleeping habits worked for her. Almost all of her conflicts at school were created by Arizona schools that promoted programs to use progressive discipline and/or retaliation versus identifying, testing, and placing students like her in IEPs under the IDEA. The other problems resulted in school officials and ex-friends of mine who decided that she needed to experience sexual contact with male students, alcohol, and marijuana usage. All was reported to the appropriate authority. All was ignored. Alissa was solicited by a male teacher in a public school during a class to wrestle a male student without any regards for her safety, as well as protections for those female parts of her body that were in fact made sore by the young man groping her private parts under the authorization of a male teacher. She was humiliated, shamed, and disgraced because she had no idea what to expect, but not what did happen. Her ability to foresee what to expect was hindered as an ADD child. I spent numerous hours with her crying and dealing with her embarrassment and shame to overcome this tragedy. Within days, Alissa put this behind her, as she always did with her quickness to forget. Then she was accused of being gay and moved away from her friends by 4 teachers who decided to share this information with other students on the campus, causing me to change schools. This incident caused further harm, but was not so easily forgotten due to the accusation being spread on campus. She was also issued detention slips for failing to run the mile in the time they demanded, even though the school was notified she had asthma. This was followed with a detention slip because she failed to pick up a slip of paper to use the restroom after she had been humiliated with the accusations of being gay. All of this was done during a federal Department of Education investigation of the school failing to comply with the IDEA. After they stopped retaliating against Alissa, another school in the same district decided to only pat search one child out of 24 students in a classroom looking for some missing change, candy, and a paper hole puncher. This was her younger sister, Sarah. To this day, including during this past school year, some teachers continue to try to punish Alissa for not paying attention or following instructions, in spite of those same teachers attending the forced IEP meetings I demanded, because they decided she did not have ADD or a learning disability. Alissa's attitude remained positive at school, but very adversarial at home, based in part for all of the above, but in part because she had so much trouble passing her tests, including the AIMS testing, and had to be tutored daily by me for her to do her homework. I tutored Alissa every night, where she displayed excellent study habits with some of the best note-taking I've seen of any of my 6 children. The primary problem remained the same. She could not comprehend and or retain most of the material she took noted about in order to use it for testing. This year, she took a job with Jack in the Box, where she was praised by all of those she worked with because she is a very hardworking person that just wanted to be accepted and please those around her. She also took on a steady boyfriend. The combination of school, the job, late hours, and dad's rules were taking a toll on her world, which had become far too complicated, using her exact words. The boyfriend was too demanding and critical of her mental condition by ridiculing her for it. This caused a conflict with my teachings that she was not stupid or inferior in intelligence to anyone. Her boyfriend also encouraged her to break basic rules I had established for Alissa, which included skipping classes to be with him, leaving campus without permission, a positive attitude about school, allowing male friends in the home when I was not there, and my recommendation to end this relationship due to his bad temper and ridiculing her for her learning disability, which she told me she was after school ended. Because she had a class with him and did not want to anger or embarrass him at school, she was planning to break off the relationship, according to several of her female friends and what she told me. Alissa required a lot of sleep. Before her job and boyfriend, Alissa would go to bed between 8 and 9 p.m. every night. This was disrupted by her job and the demands of the boyfriend. Alissa developed a like for marijuana after the woman she babysat for her son. So we had an ongoing conflict when I would find it. We had approximately 6 incidents when I found small amounts in her possession. The last time was approximately 2 to 3 weeks before she ran away. She was grounded each time. After her last argument with her boyfriend the day before she ran away, that ended with her throwing the phone against the wall and he squealing his truck tires as he sped away. I grounded her from him because I was not aware he had such a bad temper. Alissa did not display any drug dependencies to me except the occasional marijuana usage, which occurred over a 4-year period. Alissa was trying to run away this same time last year when I convinced her to stay with her 2 brothers for about 3 to 4 weeks. She returned home under objection to the same rules I've used through 4 older children. We had an added conflict due to her deceased mother's sister's attempts to use Arizona's Child Protection Agency to steal our girls in 1993, 1994, even though her mother made it very clear to them that she wanted our children to remain with me. The false accusations against me were cleared by CPS, but left behind a scar and idea in my children that if I did not give into certain demands against my rules and some laws, that they could use the threat of CPS against me to get what they wanted. Such an incident occurred this time last year, whereupon I called CPS to report the same, because I grew tired of trying to raise my children under this threat. No investigation resulted. Alissa has been running away from confusing situations and or anytime she thought she was in trouble since I first adopted her at 2.5 years of age. Her favorite phrase was, quote, "You're being mean to me," end quote, which later turned into, quote, "You're abusing me," end quote, which was often misinterpreted many times by those who did not know Alissa. I've always tried to avoid any form of physical discipline with any of my children, stopping my wife when we first got married. When we got married, she had 2 and I had 3. I adopted her 2 and we had 1 between us. She died in 1993. The last day I saw her on May 17, 2001 was the last day of school with only 2 classes. She had 1 final and some errands to run for as a teacher's aide. I became concerned over the fight she had with her boyfriend the day before, knowing that she had used this class to visit her boyfriend, who she had been told not to see for at least 1 week due to his display of anger at Alissa for not letting him come inside our house when I was not at home. I found out later that she had in fact used this time to visit with him upon his request, again, violating my orders. I took Alissa out of school early to discuss the summer rules, her visiting her Aunt Lynette in California, the marijuana, and attempted to diffuse our adversarial portion of our relationship, including my concerns about the temper and demands her boyfriend was putting on her. We got lunch and returned home. We agreed that it had been a very difficult and tedious school year with my having to tutor her every night. We agreed that we needed time away from each other, but we're arguing over her going to her Aunt Lynette in California, mostly due to a difference of opinion about the usage of marijuana. I conceded to let her go if she would discuss her plans to break up with her boyfriend before she left and promised to refuse any marijuana she was offered. This turned into another argument over my trying to control everything in her life and everyone trying to tell her what to think and do, including her boyfriend, John Lackman. She also told me that she was tired of her job at Jack in the Box and worried about all the changes about to occur, with certain people leaving. Am I constantly checking on
the new Motorola Razr Plus.
Let me show you something, it's a good life, it's a good vibe, it's a good time, yeah, we live.
on Thursday. No one saw anything. My security camera film showed nothing of when Alissa left. I watched all 8 hours of it. She would have had to leave through her bedroom window or out the back gate. Sincerely, Michael R. Turney.
So I have a couple of questions about statements contained in this document, Exhibit 94. The time that he said he arrived home after having picked up Sarah. I believe when you're reading it, he claimed that was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yes,
correct? He claimed that he went to Sarah's school and the buses arrived late, correct?
yes.
Any discussion about having gone to a house, Sarah's friend's house, to pick her up
Yes.
in here, in this letter?
I'm not sure he specifies that.
Well, let me,
Can I take a look at it again?
yeah, well, let me see if I can find it for you so that I don't misquote him.
Mr. Mordino, if you want to put it on the Elmo, he's got a screen in front of him and that might keep
Thanks.
you from running back and forth.
So I'm looking at page 3 and see this paragraph that begins, I left the house sometime between noon and 1.
Yes. Yes,
We did not get home until 5 p.m.
correct.
I also had to pick up her younger sister from a trip to Waterworld. After the buses dropped her off. The buses were late. You see that?
Yes.
Towards the end on the last page, he says that he watched the security film from that day, correct?
Yes, he says he watched all 8 hours of it.
All 8 hours of it. So if there were 8 hours of it, would that seem to indicate that it was running for 8 hours?
Yes.
Now, he is apparently telling these folks that she would have had to leave through her bedroom window or out the back gate in order for her not to appear on the video, correct?
Yes.
So that would mean that she leaves a note saying she's leaving and yet doesn't want to be on the videotape, correct?
Correct.
What this reference to star 69, were you involved or was it Detective Anderson in looking at the phone records?
I looked at the phone records.
So for those who might not know what that is, what's star 69 and or star 67?
Star 69 would provide you with a phone number that was calling. And then star 67 would log it with the phone company so that it could be obtained. That's my understanding of it.
Now, in reviewing the phone records, did you notice whether or not the defendant was paying for caller ID?
Yes.
Did you notice whether there was any indication, and I'll show you these records later, but any indication of star 69 being used on other occasions?
Yeah, on the phone records that I looked at, it was used frequently.
Was there a charge for it?
I believe you're allowed like 6 usages, and then there would be charges accumulated after that.
Now here in this letter, he makes the claim that she had a black suitcase that was missing.
Yes,
Not her backpack was missing.
that's correct.
While we're on the topic of the phone records, what phone records did you obtain?
We obtained the copy of the AMA dump, which was from the lawsuit request for the landline. During the search warrant, we also recovered cell phone bills for Alyssa's phone and the defendant's phone.
Okay. Now the AMA dump, what is that?
The AMA dump is basically a kind of technological dump of phone information. It comes in a very difficult form to read, but it will lay out what phone calls came in on a landline.
And how did the defendant provide that to you?
Yes, he had provided it.
He obtained it from Quest,
Yes,
provided it to you.
yes.
So in reviewing the calls that day from the defendant's phone, and I think you said you also had records of Alyssa's phone.
In the form of bills that the AT&T had sent.
Okay. Were there also bills found during the search?
Yes. That's where we obtained them through the search warrant.
All right. Both AT&T and Quest?
Yes,
Now, in the letter to Nipmick, he said he went to pick her up early, correct?
correct.
Were there calls from the defendant's phone to reflected the morning of May 17th to Alyssa's cell phone?
Yes.
At what time?
There was a short 1-minute call at 10:05 in the morning, and then another call for a minute, I think within a half hour after that.
Was there a call to Alyssa's cell phone in the afternoon
Yes,
from the defendant's phone?
yes.
And what time was that?
That was, I believe, at 1:09 p.m., and it was a 7-minute phone call.
So either there was a 7-minute conversation. Let's think, let me ask you what would be the options here? There's a 7-minute conversation, is one, correct?
That would be my assumption, yes.
Between somebody using those two phones,
Yes.
or
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
would it be possible to leave, do you know, if you know, a 7-minute voice message?
I believe it would be possible.
In any event, all you had was a record of the call being made
That's correct.
and the length of time that it took.
Yes.
Was there a call to Alyssa's cell phone later from the defendant's number, late afternoon, early evening?
Yes.
What time?
I'd have to look at my report to refresh my memory.
I'll come back to that. I want to go through some other documents that you found in the house. I'm going to show you exhibits 107, 108, 109, and 110. Ask if you recognize them. Do you recognize these documents?
I do.
From where? Where do you recognize them from?
They were recovered in the search warrant.
At the defendant's residence?
Yes.
We'd move the admission of 107, 108, 109, and 110.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibits 107, 108, 109, and 110 are admitted.
Now, during the course of your investigation, did you become aware that was it reported to you that in the summer of 2000 that Alissa had spent a short period of time with her two brothers, John and Michael, living in their apartment?
Yes, in May of 2000.
I'll show you exhibit 110. Oops. A parental custodian and child agreement, correct?
Yes.
And this is an agreement between Alissa, the defendant, as well as one of her brothers, Michael, Seth, Turney, correct?
Correct.
And so Michael S., which would be Michael Seth's Turney, correct,
That's correct.
has agreed to assume temporary custody of Alissa Turney to allow her time to be away from her father and sister, whereupon she will follow any and all instructions given by Michael S. Turney or forfeit this privilege. That's one of the provisions, correct?
Yes.
Apparently, he was asking Alissa to agree that she's incorrigible and has refused to return home under the direct authority of her parent, Michael R. Turney, correct?
Yes.
And for the court reporter, if I'm reading too quick, please let me know. That it is understood at this time that her reasons for not returning to the home of her father, Michael R. Turney, immediately are not for any of the following.
Objection, what's the question?
I'm reading from the document.
The objection's overruled.
Physical abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, lack of proper housing, lack of food, clean housing, physical abuse of her sister, Sarah Turney, sexual abuse of her sister, Sarah Turney, correct?
Yes.
That she will no longer go into page 2. Allow any other friends, parents to, correct?
Yes.
That she will discontinue any bisexual ideologies and or acts while living with her father, Michael R. Turney, correct?
Correct.
Apparently that I will enter a drug rehab program and or outpatient counseling for the same, correct?
Yes.
Now, Exhibit 107 is a document, the revocation of that temporary guardianship, apparently, correct?
Yes.
And at this time, if you read closely Exhibit 107, this was made when they were living at 18031 North Villa Rita Drive, correct?
Correct.
Not the house on 34th Street.
That's correct.
Are you familiar with the name Charity Robinson?
I am, yes.
And how are you familiar with that name?
I interviewed her at least twice during the investigation.
So showing you Exhibit 109. How would you describe this document?
This is I guess, somewhat of a legalistic contract between Michael Turney, the defendant, and Alissa Turney.
Dated July of 1999.
Yes.
Apparently related to a birthday party that she might be going to.
Yes, at Charity's house.
And Alissa was, he wanted Alissa to agree that his instructions, as noted above, would be followed at this birthday party.
Yes.
Then Exhibit 108 is dated July 18th of 1999, just a few days later, correct?
That's correct.
Basically the same document, just a different date.
That's correct. It's it's between Michael, the defendant, and the parents of Charity Robinson.
Yeah, the first one was between the defendant and Alissa.
That's correct.
This one is between the defendant and Charity's parents.
Correct.
In order for Alissa to be allowed to go to this birthday party.
Correct.
Now, detective, going back to some of your experience as a missing persons detective, have you, well, first of all, I think I've already asked you this question. No remains of Alissa Turney have been found.
No.
Have you investigated cases, missing person cases or homicide cases where no body has been found?
Yes, a number of them.
And so if you don't have a body, then how do you go about your investigation?
I mean, not having a body is obviously an obstacle to a homicide investigation, but is the ability to dispose of a body should not be rewarded. We look for, again, pattern of life of the missing person. We want to know what they were doing before they disappeared, who they were interacting with, if they had any enemies, any issues. We want to know exactly, based on his life pattern and other circumstantial evidence, that leads us to determine that they are no longer alive. And then we look for a reason for that. So whether they are suicidal, medical issues, or it's a homicide.
The cases that you were involved in investigating were originally the body was missing. Or in some of those was the victim's body eventually found.
In some of those, yes.
What were some of the means by which those bodies were hidden for a period of time?
We've had bodies that have been placed in trash containers and they end up in the landfill, which can result in a landfill search. I've participated in those. We've had bodies buried. We've had bodies put in bodies of water, Lake Pleasant. We've had bodies that have been burned, bodies that have been destroyed or dismembered so that they couldn't be recovered.
Let's talk about crime scenes, potential crime scenes for a moment. You indicated that when the search was done of the residence on 34th Street, where Alissa had been living, nothing was found which provided you a clue as to whether or not she had been killed in that location, correct?
That's correct.
Is it unusual to not, well, let's assume that you had gone there the next day, May 18th, 2001, and found nothing in the way of physical evidence that Alissa had been killed in that house, blood, whatever. Is that something that never happens?
No, unfortunately, there's a lot of ways to kill a person. You can strangle somebody, you can smother somebody, you can poison somebody, you can strike them in a way that wouldn't produce blood. There's a lot of ways that, a lot of methods of killing somebody that would not result in a physical scene.
Matt, I was going to say, can we take approach real quick?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and we'll take our afternoon recess at this time. It's about 2:40 right now. I'll ask the jury to be back in the jury room in 15 minutes. That'll be about 5 minutes to 3. You can leave everything in the courtroom if you'd like. Please remember the admonition. The jury is now excused. Mr. Imbordino, any other witnesses today?
No. I can try to find a different word. Yeah. I'll think of something.
Please be seated. We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. And Mr. Imbordino, whenever you're ready, you may resume your direct examination of Detective Summershoe.
Detective, during the break, did I show you exhibits 14, 13, 14, 73, and 113?
Yes,
And did you recognize them?
I did.
What are they?
There are items that we recovered in the search warrant.
Now, we've mentioned some phone calls here today. Are you able to give us, from the records that were found, what the landline number was?
I have to refer to my report. I don't have it memorized.
Okay. Let me, yeah, if you want to look at your report, just do so.
The landline phone number was 602-657-1177.
Now, some of the records, were there records for 2 cell phones?
Yes, there were records for 2 cell phone in the form of bills that we found in the search warrant.
And in whose name?
They were in the defendant's name, but the numbers were 2 different numbers.
And what were they?
Again, I'll have to refer to my report. One of the numbers was 602-758-8163, which we identified as the defendant's number. The other number was 602-758-8165, which we identified as Alissa's cell phone number.
And I apologize if I've asked this before, but you mentioned that records were recovered from Quest showing the phone call coming in the morning of May 24th, correct?
Correct.
And that was from a payphone in somewhere in California.
Yes,
And that phone call was to what, a landline or a cell phone number?
that was the landline.
The landline number that you found recordings for audio cassette tapes of conversations.
Yes.
We've never seen that before.
We would move to admit 13, 14. Let's see. 73 and 113.
Any objections?
No objection from defense.
It's ordered admitting exhibits 13, 14, 73, and 113.
Detective, I'm not going to put them on the screen right now. It's a little hard to see through but let me just, and showing you, for example, exhibit 73, this envelope that these records are in, what is that?
That's an evidence bag we use when we collect evidence.
And what information would you put on that?
We would put the report number, the date it was collected, and usually a item number that references it in our report. And is there also a barcode is generated for it?
73, I just want to show one thing if I can, please. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
And I want to just ask you, and these are, am I correct? Exhibit 73 is actually records prior to May 17th. In fact, from April of 2001.
That's correct.
But on here, when you see where it says various dates, call return activation, what does that mean?
That's the, I believe that's the star 69 where it identifies the call that's coming in.
So if you don't press star 69 or star 69, dial the number back.
It'll give you a message what number it was that called.
And on a regular phone bill such as this, if you didn't do that, is it going to show incoming calls on this, on a regular phone bill like this?
Not a landline, no.
On a landline, yes.
No.
In documents that you recovered during the search warrant, did you find a document wherein the defendant claims to know who killed Alissa?
Yes, there were a number of documents like that.
And were two particular, did he accuse two particular men?
Yes.
Did you have a name for those men?
He provided two names, Gary Wayne Morissetti and Charles Parsons.
Did you try to locate those two people?
Yes.
And what did you discover?
We found Gary Wayne Morissetti had died. He was from Illinois, and he had died in 1987. Charles Parsons was from Texas. He had died in 1993. We contacted their families and verified that.
And related, and in this document, did he indicate to you and in the document that these two men had been hired by this union that he had had a dispute with, the defendant, I mean?
Yes, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW.
And in fact, did he make a statement in these documents that he was the blame for Alissa being killed because of this dispute that he had with the union?
Yes.
And did he, in this document, state that not only that he knew that these two men had killed her, but they had dumped her body in Desert Center, California?
Yes.
Explain to us, if you can, please. Let's assume that somebody goes missing like Alissa, and from time to time are bodies, unidentified bodies found around the nation, in fact, around the world.
Yeah, it's estimated there's approximately 40,000 unidentified bodies in the United States.
When a body that might match in some fashion the description of the person you're looking for, how are you made aware of that?
Through a variety of ways. NCIC has an internal algorithm that when somebody's entered as a missing person, if there is an entry for an unidentified person, it will automatically, typically every month or so, it'll give you a list of possible matches to the unidentified remains to the missing person. The NamUs database also contains missing and unidentified persons, and you can do searches through a variety of search engines through that, what you're looking for, date range, identifying features, sex, and a multitude of qualifiers they can look for searches and things like that. Additionally, missing persons, there's the CODIS system, which is the National DNA Database. So when somebody goes missing, you create a profile of that missing person, either from a primary source of DNA or typically it's family reference samples, parents, siblings, that sort of thing. That then gets entered into the CODIS database. And the CODIS database does regular searches for any unidentified remains that are submitted to them, looking for possible matches.
In this case, were there instances where the Phoenix Police Department was contacted about a potential at least, potentially might have been Alyssa's body,
Yeah, there's been a number of unidentified remains that we have compared to Alissa.
and it wasn't her.
No.
Now, in this particular case, during the course of the investigation, was DNA from family members collected?
Yes, DNA was collected from Sarah and John, her siblings, and then also from Stephen Strom, her biological father.
So then explain how that happens. That biological evidence collected from them where does it go from there?
Family reference samples are collected. Typically, it's what we call a buccal swab. You swab inside somebody's cheek. That then gets sent to a lab which analyzes it. So to create a profile for a missing person, absent having a primary DNA source from them, you look for the closest relatives, and then the lab is able to create a profile so that if any, you get half your DNA from a parent, half from your father, half from your mother, and then siblings also share some of the same DNA. So when you combine these, you create a profile for the missing person to compare to unidentified remains.
Sir, if we can just get you a
Oh,
little
sorry.
closer, that's okay.
I don't believe FTR is on.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm just making check marks, Judge, so I don't repeat myself. Yeah. I apologize if I already asked you this question. I remember you testifying that you yourself had spoken to Aunt Lynette, correct?
Yes, I had.
Did you receive any information helpful to you in locating Alissa?
No, Alissa was not there.
In the course of your investigation, did you discover that the defendant had some military experience?
Yes, he was in the U.S. Army from 1970 to 1970. I'm sorry, 1968 to 1970.
And what about, we've had some testimony about a deputy sheriff. Where would that have been?
Yeah, he was a deputy sheriff with Maricopa County Sheriff's Office from 1970 to 1974.
Did you also find evidence that he had done private investigation work?
Yes, we found business cards indicating he was a private investigator.
You mentioned that not only as a patrol officer, but then as in your duties when you were assigned to the missing persons unit, that you were familiar with reports like this. Either you call them runaway reports or missing juvenile reports, correct?
Yes.
In your experience, how are the majority of those resolved?
The majority of them resolve within days or weeks. Typically, a runaway goes to a friend's house or another family member's house. They, sometimes they'll even go to school still. They've ran away from their primary residence. But they typically are found within weeks or months, or days or weeks, actually.
How many runaway notes in your career if we want to call this note a runaway note, it's a note that talks about her leaving. How many of those have you found in your experience?
In my experience, it's pretty rare for a runaway to leave a note just because they are willfully leaving their house. They're trying to get away from their parents or their home situation. So they're not typically going to leave clues of where they're going. They just leave.
Now, I'm going to be switching back to my laptop. I hope. And if Mr. Jackson will be kind enough to show me how to do this again.
I think he charges extra for IT work.
It should, it's on them. But may we approach? It can be off the record.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to resolve a quick issue. This should not take more than a couple of minutes. I'll just ask you to go back to the jury room for a few minutes. You can leave everything in the courtroom. Please remember the admonition. The jury is now excused.
Yeah, maybe. That's his answer.
Please be seated.
They find hours and hours, countless hours of audio tapes and videotapes. Why did you record so much?
Why do I record so much? The videos are recorded because I love my family.
Weren't these surveillance cameras in the house?
Those are for protection of my house. Does that
So
seem
for
unusual to you?
security.
Yeah, most of it's for security. Why? Because I want to spy on everybody?
Why didn't you hang on to those things that could have proven that you're not to blame? The surveillance video from the day Alissa disappeared. The audio recording of that phone call you
There was
said she
nothing
made.
on the tape. They were told that.
Okay, so it sounds like you cut out that part. Okay, cool.
Because that's the next part, I think.
Good to go? All right. Jury can come back.
I don't know, it's kind of weird how it was like clipped together, but whatever. Because it was like taken from like different parts of the interview and clipped together. So I'll start with that.
We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Mr. Imbordino, you may resume your direct examination of the witness whenever you're ready.
Thank you. At this time, Your Honor, I would move the introduction of Exhibit 97, the two clips from prime time.
Any objection?
Not,
Oh, go ahead.
not for defense.
Exhibit 96. That was 97?
Yes, sir.
97 is admitted.
Detective, did you watch watch, I guess is a better word, a primetime broadcast involving Mr. Kionis talking with the defendant about Alyssa's case.
Yes, it was Primetime Crime is the name of the program.
And when was that broadcast?
I believe August of 2009.
And have you watched a recording of it?
I have, yes.
And is there a portion of it where Mr. Kionis is asking the defendant about the surveillance camera and phone recordings?
Yes.
They find hours and hours, countless hours of audio tapes and videotapes. Why did you record so much?
Why do I record so much? Videos are recorded because I love my family.
Weren't these surveillance cameras in the house?
Those are for protection of my house. Does that seem
So for
unusual to you?
security.
Yeah, most of it's for security. Why? Because I want to spy on everybody?
Why didn't you hang on to those things that could have proven that you're not to blame? The surveillance video from the day Alissa disappeared. The audio recording of that phone call you
There was
say she
nothing
made.
on the tape. They were told that.
That sound familiar?
Yes, that's from the program.
Now, is there another section where the defendant is he's asked, did you molest Alissa, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever do anything sexual with your stepdaughter?
No. Why would I do that? They have no proof whatsoever, anything other than rumors, innuendos, and lies.
If they have no proof, that doesn't mean you didn't do it.
Well, again, there's only two people that can confirm whether I did it or didn't. One is me, and the other is Alissa. Alyssa's not here, and I'm sitting here. And all I can say till hell freezes over, I didn't do a damn thing to my daughter.
And while you would agree with me that he denies having done anything to his daughter,
That's correct.
but he's absolutely correct. The only people that would know would be her and him,
That's correct.
and she's not here.
Correct.
Your Honor, I wonder, could we approach for a moment?
On or off the record?
Off is fine.
Off. Okay.
Together.
We are back on the record in State versus Turney. Let the record show the presence of counsel, the defendant, and the jury. Mr. Imbordino, you may resume your direct examination of the witness whenever you're ready.
Thank you. At this time, Your Honor, I would move the introduction of Exhibit 97, the two clips from primetime.
Any objection?
Not,
Oh, go ahead.
not for defense.
Exhibit 97. That was 97?
Yes, sir.
97 is a minute.
Detective, did you watch watch, I guess is a better word, a primetime broadcast involving Mr. Kionis talking with the defendant about Alyssa's case?
Yes, it was Primetime Crime is the name of the program.
And when was that broadcast?
I believe August of 2009.
And have you watched a recording of it?
I have, yes.
And is there a portion of it where Mr. Kimonis is asking the defendant about the surveillance camera and phone recordings?
Yes.
They find hours and hours, countless hours of audio tapes and videotapes. Why did you record so much?
Why do I record so much? Videos are recorded because I love my family.
Weren't these surveillance cameras in the house?
Those are for my protection of my house. Does that
So
seem
for
unusual to you?
security.
Yeah, most of it's for security. Why? Because I want to spy on everybody?
Why didn't you hang on to those things that could have proven that you're not to blame? The surveillance video from the day Alissa disappeared. The audio recording of that phone call you
There was
say she
nothing
made.
on the tape. They were told that.
That sound familiar?
Yes, that's from the program.
Now, is there another another section where the defendant is being he's asked, did you molest Alissa, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever do anything sexual with your stepdaughter?
No. Why would I do that? They have no proof whatsoever, anything other than rumors, innuendos, and lies.
If they have no proof, that doesn't mean you didn't do it.
Well, again, there's only two people that can confirm whether I did it or didn't. One is me, and the other is Alissa. Alyssa's not here, and I'm sitting here. And all I can say till hell freezes over, I didn't do a damn thing to my daughter.
And while you would agree with me that he denies having done anything to his daughter,
That's correct.
but he's absolutely correct. The only people that would know would be her and him,
That's correct.
and she's not here.
Correct.
Your Honor, I wonder, could we approach for a moment?
On or off the record?
Off is fine.
Off. Okay.
move the admission of Exhibit 100.
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 100 is admitted.
Detective, the surveillance videos, we've covered the one and we showed the one with Alissa and Mr. Lockman, correct?
Correct.
There was another one with Alissa on the couch with a Mr. Stanley, correct?
Correct.
And was that provided to you or did you find it during the search?
It was provided to Detective Anderson.
And do I understand you correctly that the two, I need to clarify this, the two videos of the same interaction between Alissa and Mr. Lockman, one was found during the search
Correct.
and one was provided to Detective Anderson?
That's correct.
I always hate this part. That's the last question I have, I believe, of this witness.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Imbordino. Cross-examination, Ms. Hicks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, Detective, just a couple of minutes ago, Mr. Imbordino showed you a clip of Mike during a primetime interview on 2020.
Yes.
And the narrator asked him why he didn't keep the tapes that he had.
Correct.
And the clip showed a response that said, well, there was nothing on the tape.
Yes.
But that's not the whole comment, right? There's actually more that he said.
In the clip that was played here, or
Yes, I'm just saying in that clip, in that segment, there was more that Mr. Turney said that wasn't showed.
yes, he said they were told there was nothing on it.
Well, he said they were told that there was nothing on it, but also that he told Detective Schoenfelder about the tape. And Detective Schoenfelder told him, no, I don't need this. This is just a runaway.
In the clip that was played, I don't think Detective Schoenfelder was mentioned.
No, not in the clip that was played. It was cut off before that was shown.
Again, I can't recall that Detective Schoenfelder was mentioned in the primetime crime episode.
I mean, Detective, you've reviewed it, right?
The episode?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm assuming you've reviewed the transcript.
Yes.
I mean, Detective, it was disclosed. Do you have it? I see that you have your laptop. Would you like to refresh your recollection?
Of the transcript?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'll have to. I don't have a copy of that, so it's 79 pages, I believe, or something like that.
So, sir, you watched the whole 2020 interview, right?
I did, yes.
So you're aware that the clip that was just showed was spliced together different segments of the interview.
Yes.
And you had mentioned that you didn't remember the statement about Detective Schoenfelder, right?
I don't believe that was in the primetime crime episode.
Okay. Would it help if I refresh your recollection?
Sure.
May I put your honor?
You may.
So Detective, I just showed you a transcript of the 2020 interview.
Yes.
And in that transcript, I showed you a couple of statements that Mr. Turney made to the narrator.
Yes, in the transcript of the, not in the
Yes.
actual broadcast interview.
In the transcript.
Yes.
Yes. And in the transcript, Mr. Turney said, I saved it and said, do you want me to give you this tape? A detective, Schoenfelder, told me, he said, no, man, this is just a runaway. I don't need all that stuff.
Are you asking me if that's in the
Yes.
transcript? Yes.
Counsel, just for everybody's clarification, there was a mention of Primetime Live and there was a mention of 2020. Are those the same thing?
It's yeah, it's the same thing. Primetime Live, that was what I was referring to. There's not a separate one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Detective, there was a note found in this case in Alyssa's bedroom on May 17th, 2001.
Are you asking me that? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
A handwriting expert analyzed it.
Yes.
It was Alyssa's handwriting.
Correct.
And in the note, Alyssa stated that she was going to California.
Yes.
It said that she took $300 from her father.
Yes.
Now, you spoke to Mike's kids during your investigation, correct?
Yes.
So you know that Mike kept cash around the house.
That's what they said. Yes.
Okay. And you reviewed the banking records in this case.
Yes.
And there wasn't any transaction history, really lengthy transaction history, but you did see that 2 days before her disappearance, Alissa deposited a check at Desert Schools Federal Credit Union.
Yes.
She deposited $229.81,
Yes.
withdrew $200 cash,
Yes.
about half of her paycheck, more or less.
More or less. Yes.
Now, Detective, you testified on direct that you've worked with runaways before.
Yes, for 15 years.
So you know that cash is an untraceable fund.
Yes.
It's important to have cash on hand to survive without being tracked.
Yes.
And as you said, you've worked with runaways for 15 years, so you've encountered very many different scenarios. So you know that sometimes with runaways, teenagers leave home, but they return.
Yes.
Or they leave home and contact family later.
Yes.
Or they leave home and something happens to them.
Yes.
And you know that runaways are a vulnerable population.
Yes.
In your line of work, I'm sure you've encountered victims of sex trafficking.
Yes.
I'm sure you're aware of risk factors for victims of sex trafficking,
Yes.
mental health issues or disorders,
Yes.
family rejection due to identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, family rejection due to identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer,
Yes.
drug use,
Yes.
academically off track,
Yes.
living in an area with a large influx of cash-rich workers or tourists,
Yes, that could be.
and runaways.
Yes.
Now, going back to Alyssa's bank records, there was one transaction that you reviewed from May, that happened on May 15th, correct?
I'd have to look at, if you could show me the exhibit again, I
Let
could.
me see.
And I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yes. Alissa, when you reviewed the banking records, there was one transaction from May 15th.
That's correct.
And that's a transaction that we discussed before, that she deposited $229.81 and withdrew $200.
29. Transfer funds into her account for $200 on the 1st. On the 4th, there's a withdrawal for $200. There's a deposit on the 15th of $10.81, and then a deposit on the 21st of $285.74. That's what I'm looking at here.
So Detective, as part of your review of this case file, you reviewed other financial records, correct?
Yes.
And in those other financial records, there was a mention of the paycheck of the $229 and then the $200 cash, right?
Can you, I don't know which bank records you're referring to. You're talking to Alyssa's bank records?
Yes.
Yeah, Alyssa's bank records are right here. And no, there's no, I don't see a deposit or a check for that amount.
Okay. Now, sir, did you review the banking records analysis that was done by Detective Walker from MCAO?
I did not know.
No? Okay. Now, Detective, you had mentioned on direct that at some point, Mr. Turney closed Alyssa's bank account.
Yes.
And you said that he did that because he wanted to cut her off.
That's what he told, I believe he told ABC that.
Okay. But you left out the rest of the statement, that he was told that if he closed it, then she would be more likely to come back because she would be desperate.
Yes, I believe he said something like that.
Now, Detective, you spoke with many people who knew Alissa.
That's correct.
You read letters that she wrote her friends.
Yes.
You got a pretty good idea of the type of person that she was.
Yes.
Reviewed her school records.
I believe her GPA was 2.44 at Paradise Valley. So she was doing C+, B-
Sure.
academics.
She had an IEP,
That's correct.
an individualized education plan.
Correct.
And you saw documentation of that.
I did.
You saw that that document or that IEP was in place her junior year.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Alissa attended 2 high schools.
Yes.
Barry Goldwater.
And Paradise Valley High School.
Correct. You were aware that when Alissa was a student at Barry Goldwater, she was skipping school.
That's what was stated to us by the defendant, yes. Or he documented that in multiple letters that he wrote.
Well, no, I'm not talking about what my client said. I'm talking about what other people told you.
Yes, some of her friends said
Yes.
that too, yes.
She was drinking underage,
Yes.
experimenting with mushrooms.
I'm going to object. This is hearsay.
Counsel, please approach on the record. The objection is sustained. Counsel may ask your next question whenever you're ready.
Now, Detective, you spoke to several of Alyssa's friends,
Yes.
and it was well known that she used marijuana.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Now, Detective, marijuana is more culturally accepted now, right?
Yes.
But this was in 2023.
No, it wasn't 2023.
This was late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
Marijuana possession was illegal in Arizona.
Yes,
Not even medical marijuana.
that's correct.
Now, you work in law enforcement.
Not anymore.
Well, you did
I did, yes.
for a very long time. Okay. So you have a general sense of what kinds of cases were being prosecuted in Maricopa County?
I didn't track every case that was prosecuted in Maricopa County.
Sure, but I mean, you know generally that there are some things that are prosecuted and something that aren't.
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Yes,
So you know that up until 2020, Maricopa County was still prosecuting possession of marijuana cases.
I believe so, yes.
And unlike today, dispensaries didn't exist.
Correct.
So Alissa had to be getting weed from somewhere.
Yes.
Friends,
I don't know where she got marijuana from.
drug dealers.
I don't know where she got marijuana from.
Now, Detective, you talked a little bit about the lack of forensic evidence in this case.
Yes.
And as part of your investigation, the Phoenix Police Department searched 2 homes.
Correct.
One that belonged to, or one where Mike and Sarah were living at the time in 2008.
Yes.
And then the home where Mike, Alissa, and Sarah lived when Alissa went missing.
Correct.
The carpets were pulled up.
Yes.
The house was analyzed with luminol.
Yes.
Now, Detective, luminol is a substance that the police use to detect blood.
Correct.
Luminol can also detect blood even after someone cleans or removes it.
They can, yes.
And there were no signs of blood.
That's correct.
Brought out the cadaver dogs.
Yes.
No body parts.
They did not indicate any remains.
And you didn't find any either.
Yeah.
So there were no physical signs that a death occurred.
No physical evidence, no.
Now, you also searched the car that belonged to Mr. Turney in 2001.
I didn't personally know.
Well, as part of your investigation, somebody searched the car, right?
Detective Anderson did. Yes.
Again, no physical evidence in the car that a death occurred.
I don't believe so, no.
Now, Detective, I want to talk to you now about the surveillance cameras that were inside the house.
Yes.
I first want to start with a camera that was inside the home. So this was back in the late 90s to early 2000s.
Yes.
Nanny cams didn't exist.
No.
Ring cameras didn't exist.
No.
So the camera in the living room was a fairly primitive technology.
Yeah, I never saw the camera itself. I assume so.
Videos weren't digitally recorded.
I don't believe so.
They weren't automatically uploaded to the cloud.
I don't think there was a cloud back then.
Right. So these were physical tapes that you found, that the Phoenix Police Department found.
Yes.
Tapes of birthday parties,
Yes.
family events,
Yes.
trips to Disneyland,
Yes.
recordings of TV shows,
Yes.
movies.
Yes.
And Mr. Turney had surveillance both inside the home and outside the home.
Yes.
And we do have some recordings from the surveillance, right?
Yes.
But as you testified, there wasn't a tape from May 17th, 2001.
Correct.
But there were also a lot of days without recordings.
Correct.
There wasn't, for example, a tape for every single day in 2001 except May 17th.
That's correct.
Now, Detective, you're aware that there was also a phone recording system on the phone in the kitchen.
There's a recording system on the landline of the home, yes.
But you weren't sure which one it was on.
I believe it was the landline of the home.
Okay. Just a moment, Your Honor. So, Detective, I know it's been a while since we've had landline phones, but you're aware that if you have a landline, you could have multiple phones in the home, right?
Yes.
And it would all be connected to the same line.
Yes.
Okay. So detective, you reviewed tapes that were recordings of conversations on the phone.
Yes,
There were recordings of Alissa talking to her friends,
yes,
but there were also recordings of Sarah talking on the phone,
yes,
recordings of Mike on the phone,
yes,
phone calls made to stores,
yes,
to school,
yes,
other family members.
yes.
It was a system that Mr. Turney had been using for years.
Like I said, I think the oldest tape I found was from the 1970s.
Sure. So before Alissa was born, too.
Yes.
Now, you said in the defense interview that there is no evidence that the phone recording system was targeted toward Alissa.
Well, I mean, no direct evidence besides, I mean, Mike's explanation of his recording of all phone calls is due to the many lawsuits he was filing. That was his explanation of it.
Well, I'm just asking you if that's what you said in the defense interview.
I likely said that, yes.
Detective, do you recall when you went through some of these recorded phone conversations, a call where, and I don't want to get into the details of the call, but there was a call where Mike was talking on the phone and Alissa picked up on another receiver. Do you recall this?
Yeah, that probably occurred a number of times in the recordings I listened to.
So based on this, you know that at least at that time in the house, there was more than one phone.
Yes.
And we talked, or you talked about this a little bit on direct, but you reviewed the phone calls. So the phone records, so you know that there was a call made to the Turney household on May 24th.
Yes.
From California.
Yes.
But you don't know if that call was picked up on the kitchen phone?
No, the records don't indicate that.
Okay, or another phone?
I don't know.
Now, during your investigation, you found one tape recording system for a phone, right?
In the new house they were living in?
Correct.
Yes, I believe there was a recording system there.
But you only found one recording system?
I believe so. And again, that's the house they were living in when we did the search warrant in 2008, not the other house. So I don't know what recording system was there in 2001.
Do you have any evidence that there were multiple recording systems?
In 2001?
Yes.
I don't know.
And detective, I'm sure you recall from your review of those phone calls that a lot of these calls ended abruptly or never started back up again.
Yeah, there were instances where the recording would stop in mid-conversation.
And detective, going back to the call on the 24th, Michael never said that call was recorded, right?
I don't believe he's ever stated that.
And we don't know if there ever was a recording.
We haven't found it.
Detective, you said that you never found it, but we don't know if it exists.
Again, it was never found, so I don't know that it exists.
Detective, you impounded the recording systems in this case?
Either Detective Anderson or I did, yes.
But you don't have any personal knowledge of how those systems work?
I don't know.
Now, Detective, you spoke with James Turney during your investigation, right?
Which James Turney are you referring to?
Michael's son.
Okay, yeah. I also spoke to his brother, James.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. You were trying to get information about what he might know about her disappearance.
Yes.
And you specifically asked him about a phone call that Alissa made to her father, Mike Turney, on May 24th, 2001.
If you can refresh my memory what you're referring to,
Sure.
I'm not.
And it might be helpful if you have, it's Bates 116 that I'm going to be referring to in this line of questioning.
Can you give me the supplement number? I don't.
Sure. looks like supplement 38.
Okay, give me 1 second. There's 2,000 pages here, so it takes me
Yeah.
a while to find it. Can you let me know which, I mean, it's a
I think
length
it's,
of these supplements, and what area you're referring to?
so it's Bates one. Do you have a Bates stamp on there or no?
I do not have a Bates stamp. Can you tell me what page number it is?
I don't think I have that exhibit.
Maybe just show me what you're looking at. I can find it online. Okay.
Detective, I just showed you a page from one of the supplements that you wrote.
Yes.
And in that report, there's a discussion of a phone call that Michael Turney received.
Yes.
Now, James told you that his dad told him that after he received a call, or that he received this call, but he could not remember what Mike claimed Alissa had told him.
Yes.
James did not tell you that his dad told him there was only static on the other end of the line, and that his father said, Alissa, is that you?
No.
Now, as a detective, you know that police reports are written close in time to an interview
Yes.
because they need to be accurate,
Yes.
reliable.
Yes.
If the case goes to trial, the state relies on them,
Yes.
defense relies on them.
Yes.
Now, if James had told you that there was only static on the other line, would you have included that in your report?
I believe so. Yes.
It would have been significant.
Yes.
It was different than what Mike had told other people.
Yes.
And you would have wanted to include that in your report,
Yes.
but you didn't.
No.
Now, you interviewed James Turney, and I'm referring to Michael's son, once on January 6, 2009.
Yeah, I interviewed him multiple times.
But there was a formal interview that was recorded, right?
My interviews with him were recorded. Yes.
There's only one recorded interview.
I believe there's another one that's recorded too.
Well, in that specific interview, he did not once mention that there was static on the other line of the call.
In the interview that we're talking about now, no.
Now, Detective, I want to talk more about that call from California. You reviewed phone records from May 24th, 2001,
Yes.
and those records show a call from the phone number 909-683-9734.
Yes.
The call took place roughly at 5 a.m.,
Yes, I believe so.
lasted about 28 seconds.
I believe it was 29.3 seconds.
So during your investigation, you learned that 909 is a California area code.
Yes.
And 1 week after Alyssa's disappearance, there was a phone call from a California phone number to the Turney's home.
Yes.
And Mr. Turney told the Phoenix Police Department it was. You weren't on the case at this point, but you reviewed the file.
Yes.
So you know that the Phoenix Police Department didn't get records of that phone call.
No.
And the phone records would have been important because they would have shown where the phone number, or I guess where the phone number was associated with, right?
Yes.
And as part of your investigation, you know that Mr. Turney took matters into his own hands. He wrote letters trying to get those records.
Yes.
He wrote a letter to his congressman,
Yes, he filed a lawsuit against Quest for the number.
and he got the records.
Yes.
Now, The California number was linked to a gas station in Riverside, California. Torrance, California.
I don't know the exact mileage.
But Alyssa's aunt lived in Torrance.
Yes.
Detective, I want to talk about the written agreements between Alissa and her father.
Okay.
We've discussed this afternoon about contracts that Michael wrote.
Yes.
And Detective, you're aware that Mike has drafted contracts for Alissa.
Yes.
He's also drafted them for Charity's parents.
Yes.
Now, Alissa went to live with her brother, Michael Seth Turney, in May of 2000.
Yes. Michael, Seth, and John.
And on May 19th, 2000, Alissa signed a contract or signed a statement, which was titled Statement of Things About My Life.
I believe so, yes.
This was a document with 16 bullet points.
I believe so, yes.
The majority of bullet points referred to drugs and sex.
Yes.
My father has never given me marijuana.
Yes.
My father has never allowed me to use marijuana.
Yes.
My father has discouraged me from engaging in sexual activities with anyone underage.
Yes.
So, I mean, of the 16 bullet points, there was also 4 that referenced abuse generally.
I had to look at it to, I mean, I'm going by memory, but if you want to show it to me, I can.
Detective, I've handed you a piece of paper. Do you recognize that piece of paper, that writing?
I do.
And for the record, this is Exhibit 68. Now, Detective, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It is Exhibit 68.
Okay.
I don't know if you were asking me that or not.
I was just saying it for the record.
Okay.
And then Detective, did you come across this document as part of your search of the house?
Yes.
Okay. So, Detective, I asked you a question about whether or not there was 4 bullet points that referred to abuse generally.
Can you tell me which numbers you're referring to? I mean, there's 16 points, so I can,
Right. So,
I mean, I can read it if you like. It's
well, it's let me see.
the first bullet point says my
Hold on.
father.
Hold on. Why don't you give me a second?
Okay.
So, bullet point number 1.
Well, hold on. Are you asking him to read from the exhibit?
No, I'm just to refresh his recollection. So,
Yes.
bullet point number 1, number 4, 11, and 12.
Okay. What is your question?
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now.
All right. So, as part of that, those 4 bullet points says, my father has never physically or sexually abused my sister Sarah. My father has never physically or sexually abused any of his children.
Well, you skipped number 1. Is that you referred to 1 for?
Well, I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're going out of order then. Okay. So yeah, the one you just mentioned is bullet point number 4. It says, my father, Mike Turney, has never allowed me to
Yeah,
physically or
so-
sexually abuse my younger sister, Sarah Turney.
Right. So there's bullet points in there that don't just relate to Alissa, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you had testified on direct that Alissa was made to sign a statement saying that Mike had never abused her,
Yeah, that's in this contract
Yeah.
right here.
but that was the focus of the contract.
Bullet point number 1 says,
Sure, but there were other things in the contract, right? 16 bullet points.
yes.
Okay.
Number 1 says, my father, Mike Turney, has never
Sir?
physically or sexually abused me.
That wasn't what I asked you.
You're asking me what the contract says, ma'am.
Okay, we can move on. Just a moment, Your Honor. Now, Detective, there's also another written statement that you found through your investigation.
I found thousands of written statements, ma'am. Which one are you referring to?
Well, this one was specifically referenced during your testimony, a parental custodian and child agreement.
Yes.
May 23rd, 2000 is the date.
Yes.
4 days after Alissa went to live with her brother,
I'm not sure the exact date she went to live with her brother.
but roughly around the same time.
I know it was May of 2000.
13 paragraphs.
I believe so, yes.
Would you like to see a copy to refresh your recollection?
I would, thanks.
Not yet. I don't think. I can't remember. I think I did.
And then for the record, this is State's Exhibit 110.
Okay.
So, sir, you briefly read over that statement.
Yes.
There's 13 paragraphs.
13 bullet points, I guess, yes.
And the purpose of it was to give temporary guardianship to Michael Seth Turney.
Yes.
There were rules in place for when she returned home.
Yes.
Can't bring boys over without permission.
Which bullet point are you referring to, ma'am? So number 10 is what you're referring to?
Yes, number 10. She won't bring boys home without permission.
It says never bring a male friend to the home of her father.
She can't date until she's 18.
Again, which bullet point are you referring to? So number 12 is,
Yeah. So detective number 12 refers to a rule that she can't date until she's 18.
it says that any and all male friends she associates with in exchange of any sort of affection between a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship.
Sir, I'm not asking you to read it.
But the statement you're saying, you're interpreting is different than what I'm seeing on the paper.
Okay. Then just say no.
No.
Okay. She can't use marijuana.
Yes, that's one of the bullet points, number 9.
She'll enter a drug rehab program.
Yes, that's number 13.
And then if you go to the first page, there's an acknowledgement that she's not moving in with her brother for any of the following reasons. Do you see what I'm referring to?
Is that bullet point number 3?
I believe so. There's several bullet points underneath it. Do you see that?
Yes, there's
Okay.
a through J underneath that.
Yes. So acknowledgement that she's not moving out for any of the following reasons. Lack of adequate food,
Lack of food is what it says.
Okay. neglect,
Yes,
drug abuse,
yes,
sexual abuse,
yes,
physical abuse,
yes,
sexual abuse of her sister Sarah,
yes,
physical abuse of her sister Sarah.
yes.
So again, this custody agreement mentions physical and sexual abuse,
It does, yes.
but that's not the focus of the contract.
Well, objection, that's calls for speculation.
The witness may answer if he knows.
It's one of the bullet points in the contract.
Okay. And Judge, how are we doing on time today?
We'll end around 4:30.
Okay. Detective, we talked a little bit earlier about some of the phone records that you reviewed in this case.
Yes,
You reviewed Mike's cell phone records from the time that Alissa went missing.
the cell phone bills that were found in the search, yes.
Sure. And do you have a copy of that in front of you? Would you like me to provide you with a bait stamp?
If I can refer to my report.
Sure. And Detective, just for reference, I'm referring to Bates 994.
Yeah, I don't have the
Oh.
base number. Is it supplement 275?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Okay, I have that in
Okay.
front of me.
So as part of your review, you discovered that there were several phone calls made between Mike and Alissa on May 17th.
Yes,
The first one at 10:05 a.m.
yes,
It was about a minute long.
yes,
The second one at 10:24 a.m.,
yes,
1 minute long.
yes,
And then we just discussed this earlier, but one at 1:09 p.m.,
yes,
7 minutes long.
yes,
Now there's also several other phone calls that are made that afternoon. There's one made at 3:41 p.m.,
yes,
4:41 p.m.,
yes,
4:57 p.m.,
yes,
5 p.m.
yes,
And then at 5:01 p.m., there's a call to the home phone.
yes, for 1 minute.
5:16 p.m., a call to the home phone.
Yes, for 1 minute.
5:17 p.m., a call to the home phone.
Yes, for 1 minute.
5:56, call to the home.
I don't believe that one is a call to the home phone.
Well, at 6:22, there was another call to an unknown number.
Yes, for 7 minutes.
6:30, a call to the home phone.
Yes, for 1 minute.
6:30, a call to Alyssa's cell.
6:33.
I'm sorry, 6:33.
1 minute. Yes.
Okay. And then there's phone calls for the rest of the night
Yes.
till the late hours.
I think the last call is at 23:59 hours, 11:59. Yes.
Now, Detective, as part of your investigation, you also reviewed cell phone records from June 2001,
For
Mr. Turney's cell phone.
not in this supplement. I don't have that documented.
Judge, this might be a good place to stop and we can pick up tomorrow.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our evening recess. I'll ask you to be back in the jury room at 10:30 tomorrow morning. You can take everything with you as you leave the courtroom this evening. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow at 10:30. Jury's now excused.
I realized I just misspoke there. The party that calls the witness cannot lead the witness, but the opposing counsel may do so on cross-examination. If they call a hostile witness, then and the judge rules them a hostile witness, then the counsel that called the witness may ask leading questions of their own witness. So that's how it goes. So looks like
Please be seated.
oh, we're gonna finish up a little bit here.
Sir, you're free to step down.
Okay.
Let the record reflect the presence of counsel and the defendant. The jury is not present. Anything for the record from the state? From the defense?
Nothing from defense.
All right. Have a nice evening. We'll see you tomorrow, 10:15. We are adjourned.
And we'll see you in the morning. So
She just went to take care of the jury. She'll be back inside.
so we've got the theoretical starting time is 8:45 Central, but I'd be shocked if they started before 9 o'clock Central or even 9:15 Central, because 9:15 seems to be more likely. But, it's like turn on your computer, listen, and if you start hearing talking, then you know that they did a surprise and shocked us with starting in a timely fashion. Don't see it. So quick turnaround, so I'll bid you all good night so that you can get some sleep and be up and do this again in the morning. And I guess I need to set up the stream for tomorrow too. So I'll bid you good night and we'll see you later. Thank you very much for joining me. Okay, bye-bye.